about 7 o'clock, so I would really like to start the meeting. So first off, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I'm Andy Stack, currently chair of the CA Board of Directors. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded. And the agenda and background for this information for tonight's meeting is available on the CA Board webpage. And I want to remind everyone to please mute your microphones unless you're speaking. When you do speak, please state your name so people know who is speaking. Please be courteous and speak clearly and slowly so that everyone can hear you. I'll introduce each item on the agenda. And if necessary, we'll do a roll call vote. And I will try to restate the motion before the actual vote occurs. So what I would like to do right now is take the official roll call for the board. Janet?
Here.
Shari?
Here.
Jenny?
Here.
Dick?
Here.
Lynn?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Jess?
Here.
Alan?
Present.
Renee?
Here.
Milton?
Here.
Andy, he's here. All right. So first item is I want to announce any closed meetings we had. And there are two of them. On June 22nd, there was a closed meeting of the Audit Committee. In attendance, committee members Jim Young, Tim Redmond, Dick Bolton, Renee Dubois, and Janet Evans. The vote to close was 5-0-0. It was closed at 7:31 p.m. and opened at 8:52 p.m. It was closed under sections 1 and 4, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel, and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. And the purpose of the meeting was review audit reports and consultation with staff, personnel, and legal matters. There was a closed work session of the CA Board of Directors on June 24th. In attendance, Dick, who came at 6:05, Renee, Jess, Lynn, Janet, Alan, Milton, Nancy, Ginny, Shari, who came at 6:30, and Andy. The vote to close was 8-0-0. Dick and Shari were not present for when we actually closed the meeting. The reasons to close were 1 and 4, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel, and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Meeting was closed at 6:05 p.m. and adjourned at 8:05 p.m. And the purpose was to discuss a legal issue and a personnel issue. So that is all I have in terms of closed meetings. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? I think Nancy said.
Yes.
Nancy, is there a second?
Second.
Jenny? Any discussion?
Yes.
Alan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm not going to be able to approve an agenda that doesn't have true resident speak out in it. For some reason, we keep going with this platform. We've got a platform, Zoom, that more of us are familiar with, that the public is more familiar with, that would do everything we want for our open meetings. I'm not suggesting it for our closed meetings, but for our open meetings, we can make a recording. We can invite other people. We can make sure that we're the only ones visible. And yet we continue to continue in this vein with no explanation except the staff is more comfortable with Google for no particular reason. And I'm also concerned that it's not for today's agenda about our work, not talking about the closed work session we had, but of our work sessions that we are not even streaming. So how can they even be thought to be open? So we are in violation of both, I believe, the law as well as our practices, as well as our values around being open and transparent to the community.
Thanks, Alan. Anything else? We're going to take the vote. Approval of the agenda. Janet,
Yes.
Shari,
Yes.
Ginny,
Jenny, you're
Yes,
muted.
I know, Renee.
Sorry, I was
It
just trying to
stays
help you.
down below. Okay,
Dick,
thank you.
Yes, but I do echo Alan's concerns.
Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
I'll say yes, but I also echo what Alan says.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
No,
Renee,
I'm going to vote yes, but I want to echo Alan's concerns.
Andy, yes. All right, agenda's approved. So we are going to go to resident speak out. We have 2 residents tonight. And so I'd like to invite our first resident, Christopher Toscano.
All right, let me get that call started. Hello, Chris.
yes, hello?
Chris, this is Andy Stack. Welcome.
Thank you, Andy.
Could he spell his last name?
Yes, it's spelled Toscano.
Oh, thank you.
Christopher, it's your time.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this board. I'm here to discuss 2 points this evening. First, to express my anger about the decision to keep the outdoor community pools closed for the summer of 2020. And second, and more importantly, to express my disappointment with how this decision was made. To my first point, the June 1st note from the CEO stated that the decision to not open the pools will deeply disappoint many of the residents and members. Wrong. We're not disappointed, we're angry. We're angry that the CA decided to open tennis clubs and golf courses and fitness clubs such as Haven on the Lake, but not the community pools. We're angry that CA saw it fit to open facilities that do not serve the summer needs of the entire community, inclusive activities such as outdoor pools, but instead open facilities that provide exclusive services for a narrowed subsection of the CA community. Tennis courts and golf courses and indoor yoga classes are not what the neighborhood children rely upon in the summer. Community pools are what they're looking for, and the CA and this board failed them. It can't be stated any other way. You have failed this community. But could things have been done differently? Were there other options for providing some community pool service? These are questions the CA members and residents deserve to have answered. Which leads to my second point, the recurring inability of the CA and this board to consider stakeholder input and provide transparency when making impactful decisions at the neighborhood level. A good example of this insufficient behavior is the Neighborhood Center survey from January 7th of this year. During your January 23rd meeting, this survey was recognized to be a spectacular failure in community engagement. In fact, it was used to be so bad that one of the board members characterized it as not a way to do business and further suggested that it warranted an apology. This incident, a mere 4 months prior to announcing the closure of the outdoor pools, should have been a lesson to this board on how to engage with the community on important decisions, but it was not. In fact, it seems the CA and this board are exhibiting a pattern of opacity in which stakeholders and CA members are not appropriately engaged prior to making such monumental decisions as not opening the outdoor pools. But if this isn't the case, and there was input from the community, prove it. Show us the data, show us your work. Therefore, I'm requesting that the CA and this board make available to all CA members and residents the data and deliberations with stakeholders that were used to support your decision that there were no viable paths to opening the community pools, because the available communications from the CA do not serve this purpose. For example, was there a survey of the community that was used to support your conclusion that member satisfaction was the main reason to keep the pools closed? Was there an engagement with the community to present the palatability of potential alternatives to opening the pools? Were there any alternatives considered? Given that other non-CA organizations have worked their way through the state mandated restrictions and have opened their outdoor pools, I believe that with a little creative thinking and appropriate engagement with the community, the CA may have found a solution to do the same for some, if not all of our community pools. Thank you for your attention, and I eagerly await your response to my request.
Thank you, Chris. Let me ask if there are any questions for the board members.
Andy?
Ginny?
No, actually, just a comment. I want to thank Chris for coming tonight and expressing concerns that many, many residents have. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
I'd like to, yeah.
Ginny? I'm sorry,
Nancy.
Nancy?
I do appreciate your coming in, Christopher, and I would like to know from the board or from Andy how we can get this information that he's requesting to him and to the rest of the community, because it apparently is not clear to the community how these decisions were made, and they have a right to know.
Okay. I don't have an answer right offhand. I have to figure that out. Alan?
Yeah,
Renee?
I will echo what's just been said. I guess I do have a question for you, Chris, and I'm really only asking this question of you because you're here and available and interested. This is not like, you're not the only one I'd like to ask this question of you. When you think about the pools being open, what do you imagine would be happening in those pools, given the current situation, the health and legal situation?
Well, I'm
What's
not
your
an
vision?
expert on. I'm not an expert on, capacity of public gatherings and things of that nature. But what I am aware of is that other non-CA organizations have done it. Appleton
Yeah.
Swim Club is open. So maybe look to them to see what they're doing and use that as a potential model for, opening some of the pools here. I think people are more disappointed with not having any of the community pools open than they would be if there were limitations that weren't in place pre-pandemic.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Renee?
So Chris, I would like to thank you for coming in today. I hope that we can get the information to you that you've requested. However, I must tell you that some of the votes that were taken in closed session, and that the board is going to have to vote to open those meeting minutes up to the public.
Fair enough.
Any other questions for Chris?
Wait, Andy?
Wait a minute. Ginny?
I'm sorry, yeah. I think what I hear Chris saying is same thing some of us have been saying. It's a process issue first. And it's what process did we use to make that decision that, in terms of the health issue and the financial issue, both of those. And that can be, I think, discussed and can be presented to the residents, which I think is a fair request. There were attempts to present it, but apparently not very successful. So I think that's all he's asking, and I think that can be done. I don't think it's a matter, my personal opinion, it's not a matter of violating any, it can be done in a way that's not going to violate closed meetings, but I could be wrong. But that's just my opinion. And I think what he's asking for, maybe not asking for, but it's something that I think is important, is an actual reality test, which is what Alan was referring to. What would happen at one of our neighborhood pools with the health and the financial conditions? That's a simple request. And then would people be still interested in going, or some people? It's just a picture of reality, I think, is all he's asking for, that people had a right to. And some people then would reject coming. Other people would say, I can tolerate that, or I'm willing to pay for that. I believe that's all Chris is asking for.
Okay.
Sorry,
All
I
right.
didn't mean to go on so long.
Any other questions? Not. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your
Thank you.
coming out to testify.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And our next one will be Joel. Joel, are you there?
Nope, he's calling now.
Andy, can you tell how many members of the community are on right now?
No, I
You-
couldn't tell you.
Could
Okay.
you
Because
No
tell-
members of the community.
Well,
It's
I
being
can't find
streamed.
the link. That's why I'm asking.
It's being
Welcome,
streamed
Joel.
from the webpage.
On the webpage, on our webpage?
There's a button on our webpage.
Where?
Hello.
Oh, hi, Joel. Welcome, Joel.
I had to get the right phone for your complicated system, which I want to thank Alan for and all the echoers earlier. As I did 2 weeks ago, very disappointed that apparently you're not streaming your work sessions because it continues to be a distinction without a difference on that. And Andy, your answer was you didn't know and basically didn't seem to care that it wasn't being live streamed. I have understood Swagit to begin with. If you go to the live thing, you have to click on Flash to get it to start playing. You didn't start streaming your meeting before it started, so I don't know how much I missed from the first minute or two. But I also don't understand the long-range plan for Swagit because it keeps bringing up issues that Flash is not going to be supported after the end of the year. I know that HCPSS apparently uses Swagit too, but I don't know how they're dealing with their Flash. So I don't understand your long-range plan for that. The fact that the county has managed not to have all this convolutedness to participate, and the planning board started putting their meetings on YouTube at your last meeting, and since you're using Google, I guess you could be doing that as well. So I appreciate that, but you made this far more complicated, and I've been told that for some people it's intentional, and that's just not acceptable. I sent you all an email early in the afternoon regarding the e-scooters and the personal mobility devices. I guess the general point was that the law doesn't really cover all the strange things that are coming on the market, and how to classify them is not always clear, particularly with the personal system, with mobility and what you actually intended by that definition and whether you meant to use the state code definitions or not. So I hope you can clarify that, because trying to put all that on a sign is going to be impossible for anybody to interpret. So basically, my point is, once you start allowing the e-scooters, you're really allowing all the similar things, unless you really can figure out a way of preventing that. So I'm not sure you realize what you're approving as a practicality of the types of devices that people may or may not have. And as Dennis told me a few months ago, you don't have path police anyway, so you're going to put up with them. And your policy is drafted, it's just a little bit convoluted, hard for the public to understand. And as I pointed out, stylistically, putting e-scooter in one of the sentences for the first time rather than electric was also a little bit drafting issue, I guess. So I didn't know if any of you had any questions about what I'd written. I talked to Renee earlier in the week.
Joel, I wanted to say thank you for the email. A lot of interesting information. Ginny has a question for you.
Actually, just a quick comment. Before you continue to congratulate the county council on their online ability, you may want to have an experience with the zoning board.
I've been with the zoning board.
No,
I
let
was
me
on it
just finish.
yesterday. I have issues with them. Yes, they're not perfect, and I can argue, but at least they allow people to participate.
No. Let me just finish, and then you don't have to comment. They do not allow you to participate unless you can get to that system, and it's very difficult. So I won't say anymore, and it's impossible for most people, many people. Okay, thanks. Thanks,
Okay.
Joel.
Listen, we're not getting into an argument here. Joel's.
Oh, no.
I have
Janet?
a question about
Janet?
Not an argument.
Joel, in your email, so are you saying that any of the electric scooters that have seats could already fall under, I mean, even without the change, could have already fallen under bicycles?
No, that's the point. Under the state law, ones with a seat are not bicycles, but the ability of you to prevent them as a practical matter, seems slim to none because people aren't going to understand the definitional problems.
Oh, interesting.
I've
Thank you.
also argued, I guess, some of the county staff in the state law definition, the first provision says it has to only carry a person. And it's unclear if the General Assembly meant ones with baskets to be excluded, or the luggage that has a e-scooter ability. Is that, since it's really the luggage, is that just carrying the human or not? So there are a lot of details, and particularly that child's toy that I assume somebody's going to invent one for adults that converts between an e-scooter and a mini bike, which in Baltimore County, mini bikes are illegal. So I haven't gotten an answer from them about what they would do with them. But to have a device that's legal in a stand-up position and not allowed in a seated position, and you can turn it around in the middle of the pathway, you're going to have to just put up with it, I guess, once you started allowing them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Joel? No, thank you, Joel. Appreciate your calling in.
Thanks.
That is all the people we had signed up for resident speak out. On the consent agenda, we already agreed, so we approved the minutes of May 14th, May 28th, the appointment of the representative from Oakland Mills to the Watershed Committee, and we approved 2 easement requests, one for Talbot Springs Elementary School. The other is for roundabout at Tamar Drive.
And Andy,
Yes.
speaking of minutes, I thought we had changed. I know in the past we used to approve minutes for closed meetings like once in a year. And I thought we had changed that. And particularly in this current situation, we may need to up that schedule. So I just want to make sure it's on our
Okay.
in our plans to both approve and figure out what we can release publicly.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, we're on the board votes. So we're going to talk about e-scooters. So Milton, would you like to?
We're going to go ahead into the discussion with Kristen and Jessica.
Kristen, Jessica, welcome.
Hi. I'm here. I'm going to let Jessica take the lead and I'll jump in when I need to.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Janet, I see you talking, but I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm not talking to the board. I was talking to my daughter across the table.
That's okay. My dog might burst in here at
She
any
was
moment.
interested in the e-scooter topic, sorry.
Sorry to call you out then. Hi, board members. Essentially, when we last spoke at the work session, I provided you a memo that details the 2 policy issues that are before you today. One of which is adjusting the overall open space policy that currently allows electronic bicycles to operate in CA open space areas to also incorporate electronic scooters, so that the state's codes that in public right-of-ways basically equate these vehicles as one and the same is applicable also on how we define vehicles that we allow to access our open space areas. And then the second policy issue is the whether we want to allow commercial sharing operations for e-scooters to operate on CA open space policy. I prepared for you the language of the policy, noted with Joel's assumption that e-scooters should probably be have electronic scooters before it. And then also a memo that details some of the concerns that you raise and how they would be incorporated into a license agreement should the board choose to vote to allow commercial operations. Were there any particular questions on any of these items?
Ginny?
Yeah, Jessica, first of all, my compliments to you and Kristen for the excellent work you've been doing, both in working with the county, I assume the potential Department of Transportation, and also the write-up material you've been giving us. It's very, very professional on both of your parts. I have a question for you in terms of what are the pros and cons of considering allowing e-scooters on our path system, but what the state's already done, the county's done, is a matter of right is the problem. Whether CA allows it or not, CA still has that control, correct?
Yeah, we can control what vehicles we decide to allow on our private property.
Okay, so what are the possibilities of, since there's a lot of arguments for the benefit maybe in downtown, to allow them there and maybe even Gateway, so that we would have a chance to really see what works and doesn't work? Because you both are going to try and put conditions on the implementation. And it will be interesting if the county doesn't agree with all the conditions we want and doesn't put all those conditions on. That's going to be confusing for the provider. But let's say we get agreement and we get all the conditions on any land in Howard County, or CA, but we limit it to that, so we really get a chance to understand whether it would really work in our neighborhoods with much more narrow path system.
Yeah, so two different issues to address that question. Essentially is that any license agreement we would enter into with a private commercial sharing company, we would reserve the right to restrict where we would allow their operations to occur. So we would essentially, if the board ultimately decides to approve the policy to allow these scooters and allow these commercial entities to operate, we could then also say, we are only going to allow you to operate in the downtown area. And essentially they would have to enforce the geofencing to prohibit trips from ending in other areas of the county. The issues that may occur is that the county's permit system essentially has 3 zones right now, one of which is downtown area, the other is Gateway, and then it does include sort of the commercial area of Dobbin Road and the bridge over 29. The pros and cons of essentially allowing, essentially, should CA choose to approve this, of matching our zoned areas to what the county has proposed, is that it increases accessibility and access for people. So it makes sure that these are not simply operating in solely a commercial area or solely on the west side of 29 in a downtown zone, but provides those village members who are in Oakland Mills to also have a chance to use these scooters to access the downtown area and services. And essentially, it's a choice we can make, and it also means that everyone will be operating under the same mapping service. I take your point about the narrowness of our paths, because that is a concern that staff raised when we were evaluating these. But we always have the potential to start small and expand, or to evaluate how the system is going and decide to contract the zone that we allow these trips to generate in.
Okay, Alan, and then Janet, Lynn, and Shari. Alan?
Thank you. I just have a context question for me, and it's related but not the same as this. Do we allow personal mobility devices that happen to have motors in them on our pathways?
Yes, our current policy allows personal mobility devices.
Okay, thank you. I was just unclear about that. Given what Joel raised, are we thinking of differentiating between scooters with a seat and without a seat, or are we going to be including scooters with a seat in this?
I do believe that our goal is to match the Maryland Transportation Code, and I did look that up, and it's defined as a vehicle that is equipped with handlebars and a platform designed to be stood on while riding. So that, to me, does not include the seat aspect. I would not say that adding a seat to a scooter is necessarily a concern. The seats that are added to scooters and the electronic scooters we're discussed about are more like bicycle seats. We're not talking about the moped that might be in people's head when they think about seated scooters.
Right. So given all that, what do we envision as our enforcement tools? So if somebody's got a seat and that doesn't fit with the code, what others are doing or the code, then what are we envisioning doing about that?
Well, essentially, we'd have the same enforcement tools that we currently have for how people use our bike system, our pathway systems. Is that there are police presence on CA bicycles, and that's bicycle pathways, and so that's one level of enforcement. But other than that, it's really left to, as most of our policies say, CA personnel to enforce these policies that we have in place.
To enforce them, or to go to the police with complaints? And are we expecting our open space people to drag kids off the pathway if they've got a bike with a scooter with a seat?
No, what I'm saying is that realistically, our enforcement options are fairly limited for our open space, and that's true today as it would be moving forward if we approve these policy changes. Our personnel, to my understanding, do not currently actively engage people unless there's a situation that's clearly unsafe and it's safe for them to approach the situation. It's very difficult to enforce, who is or is not using the pathway system at this time, given how lengthy it is and how isolated certain sections of it are.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I might just let me add something to that. While enforcement on these pathways is a challenge under any circumstance, bear in mind that if we do not change the policy to allow scooters, that doesn't necessarily mean that people on scooters won't use the pathways, and then we are going to be trying to kick them off or whatever the case may be. And so I think in either scenario, we have an enforcement challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Janet?
So one, I would like to say that as an equitable means of transportation, I support e-scooters in theory. However, I'm in agreement with Jenny's suggestion that we try a pilot program, perhaps in town center, so that we can see the impacts in one area before expanding it. It seems to me that if we allow it everywhere, it would be very hard to roll it back if that's the case. Second, I would like us to provide financial incentive for the scooter company in the event that they do not pick up their scooters after 2 hours. I absolutely think that CA should be charging them per scooter. And I find that, to just give that away seems to me, yes, that supports our residents, but it's a disservice to our residents because those open space people could be doing something else other than picking up scooters and bringing them someplace else. And then third, the tunnel over 129 is a really scary idea for scooters. The majority of the pathway there is not 10 feet wide. We walk it every single day. Bikes are currently, a challenge there. In addition to the fact that in many spots, the path drops off multiple inches on both sides. So like the paving part, and then, so it's easy to turn your ankle. It would be very easy to wreck on a bike or a scooter if you took that at the wrong angle. And that stretch of pathway in particular, I would find really challenging for allowing scooters. So that concerns me. And I'm sure that that is not the only place in Columbia that has similar situation. So anyway, the two things I would like to see before I would be interested in voting on this is to limit it to a pilot program so that we can reevaluate later, and then to charge for any removals that we have to do after, I think it was the 2-hour period that we proposed. But I would potentially be flexible on that. But
Andy, if I can just respond directly to all the questions. So first is saying that any license agreement that we have, we'll reserve the right to define the area that we allow operations. So that would already be included in any kind of operational implementation of this policy. So Jenna, I think that issue has been met. I always find in contract license, it's better to just reserve yourself powers than try to enumerate them and then have someone argue for why you can't do that one thing. So that's why we kind of approached it that way. And then as far as the scooter pickup, the county's permit process is essentially that if anyone calls or notifies the operator that there's a scooter that's in the place it shouldn't be in, they have 2 hours to pick it up, or else the county can impound it in public right of ways. When we were evaluating the operational impacts of having a commercial scooter company on CA property, we, as we talked with the open space team, wanted to reserve the right that we don't want to wait 2 hours if we think there's a problem and we're there. We wanted to reserve the right to address the issue immediately because we're in the immediate vicinity of it. So the idea was that if in the course of their work, the open space and facility team came across a scooter that was improperly parked and that was interfering with safe travel, they would just pick it up and put it in whatever vehicle they were using. And so that it didn't slow down their operations or cause any issues for us. And then just saying you can come get them whenever. But that if we have to specially mobilize to address the scooter issues, then we will charge a fee for them to pick them up. So it was really for our convenience, because if we're, and I think the discussion we had is that if we are charging for the vehicles that we pick up just in the normal course of our work, there's an issue of the administrative process of having to manage where did you pick it up, verify how you picked it up, verify that it was improperly parked, now manage the fees for how they have to pick them up and the impounding. And there's a lot more kind of administrative costs for CA for administrating that when our goal is just to remove the scooter that's causing us problems in our concerned
Is
area.
there no liability for us to take a scooter into our possession?
Well, that's why we would, in the license agreement, make sure that that is not a liability for us. That we would want to explicitly write in that we have the ability to do this because we are concerned about how those operations impact our facility team as well as any members that we see. If it starts becoming an issue as well in terms of like that our team is being so impacted by this, then I would think we could definitely go back to the scooter company and say, like, this is causing us financial problems and issues and we need to implement a fee system. I think it's just going to be very difficult for a company to essentially say, yes, I will pay for every scooter you pick up, because where's their assurance that we're not essentially just scalping the scooters off the street as a revenue generating source?
Yeah,
Because then you'll have to document
I'm just concerned because I just want to make sure that we have safeguards in place up front, because it's a lot harder to renegotiate once you've already given permission for something. So I just want to make sure that we're covered and that, I mean, because quite honestly, it's still an administrative liability. I mean, an administrative burden for us, because someone's going to have to put that scooter someplace and then somebody's going to have to give it back to them when they show up for it. And you know, like, I'm not saying that that's a huge amount, but we don't know. Like, I don't think that's a known quantity. And so that it concerns me, you know, from the standpoint of, I mean, I guess I would almost rather, I mean, we can discuss policy within CA at a future time, obviously. But like, there's something about that doesn't quite sit right with me. And, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for something that we're not anticipating.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry, Jessica, you want to handle it?
I do believe that in the internal discussions we've had about how CA would respond to this and how we would handle our operations and our needs, we have tried to anticipate everything. It's just not possible to anticipate every possible scenario before you start seeing it happening. And so instead we have written the ability to essentially adjust as needed under the terms of any license agreement to respond to the actual situations that we encounter. And that includes, we reserve the right to terminate the permission at any time. You know, if it starts becoming a burden on CA to have these operationally, although it will continue to be an enforcement issue, operationally, we can say we will no longer allow commercial e-scooter operations because it's becoming too much of a burden.
Okay, I have Lynn, Shari, Dick, and Ginny. Lynn.
Nancy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am all in favor, certainly, of multimodal forms of transportation. I look at these like bikes almost, and as a downtown resident of downtown who uses all of the town center paths daily, there's some very high traffic times. The bicycles are managed okay. You know, we just move to the side and that seems fine. These are mostly just, you know, mostly adults. Who is the average scooter user? What are they used for? Who are they? Are they used for going to and from work? Are they used as recreation? Who's the typical user?
Well, for private scooters, I do not have the demographic information. I think it's wide ranging depending on region. For commercial e-scooter operations, it's typically young adults because you have to be over 18 usually to sign these out. And typically it is kind of younger 20, 30-year-olds who are sometimes using these for recreation, but more often using them for micro transportation trips. For instance, you want to go visit your restaurant downtown, you pop out of your apartment or your house, you take it down, you stop off and you park it there. So it's kind of enabling little trips that people want to make between destinations that are not quite comfortable to walk to.
So like bikes, they could be used in the bike lanes?
Yes, they will be permitted to be used in the bike lanes in Howard County because Howard County has essentially adopted the same language as the Maryland code now, consider them bikes.
So that you would expect that most of the usage for these would really be, you know, work-related, young adults, and probably not using the paths as some kind of recreational.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I would say that most of our examples of e-scooters are occurring in more dense urban environments. That's sort of where they've been most successful. And so that's where our examples. However, in Columbia specifically, we found that most of our pathways are being used recreationally, not for transportation.
Exactly.
So it's hard for me to say how this might translate, because it could translate to either we find that Columbians enjoy tooting around the pathways on scooters as a recreational activity, or it could be that they don't use the pathways because they're not trying to make recreational trips. And it's difficult to know what we will actually see. And so it's really about creating an environment for responding to the patterns that we actually would see should these actually be deployed and we start seeing them being used in Howard County.
Okay, thank you.
Shari.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on some of the things that Janet and Lynn just asked, because I had very similar questions. That as a solution, a potential solution to getting cars off the road, if you only have one person on a scooter, you've sort of not really answered any kind of mass transit need that could be answered, for example, by having small vans, electric jitneys, other types of things that could do point-to-point pickups of people and then dropping them off at employment centers of various kinds and downtown. So it's still a one-on-one. The other real concern that I have is about the issue of enforcement. To have responsibility but no authority is a very dicey situation to be in. And it's one thing if the county, if these e-scooters, for example, were using county bike lanes, of which there are many. I mean, the county has done an enormous job in creating bike lanes, which we have all paid for. If the county was monitoring this and people were traveling in bike lanes where it's already been figured out how much distance you need and where the cars are, et cetera, then then that mode of transportation goes along, I think, much more with a transportation plan to get people from one area to a downtown or an employment center. But facing what we are facing in terms of staffing, having CA employees have to put in more time on something that really is not about CA. It's about the county. It's about, in fact, it's really about people who don't live on CA property, who will be coming in on weekends. And I am imagining if a company thinks that they're going to make a good business, that they must be thinking of people coming in on the weekends and using these for recreation, particularly around the lakes and around the neighborhood areas. So I have some real concern about, we pay a tremendous amount. The annual charge pays for the maintenance of those pathways. The county pays for its portion of its pathways, but the people who are going to be using them have no relation to that. And CA will, unless we negotiate some kind of grant from the county that pays us for being part of this transportation network, the time and effort and the use of staff to be part of this. So enforcement, what the business model is, and the benefit to the residents is not really clear to me at this point.
Dick? Oh,
Um,
Jessica and Renee.
I have a
Jessica,
question. Has anybody come to us with a proposal, with a licensing agreement, with a contract or anything for us to look at? Or are we negotiating with ourselves right now?
No, Spin is the operator who we have been discussing a license agreement and working details on with them. But the issues that we have been discussing are applicable across any of the operators. It would be something that we would include in any of those license agreements.
Well, I'm concerned, on negotiating, here we are, the board weighing in on what we will and will not do. I think it's up to the operating companies to come to us with a proposal that then we can discuss as a contract in a closed meeting as to what we'll accept and what and not accept. I think we're putting the car ahead of the horse right here. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of these scooters. As somebody who walks those pathways nearly every day, having a bunch of kids on scooters zipping around like a bunch of mosquitoes just doesn't appeal to me. And I remember being over in China where they have all these electric Vespas, and they sneak up on you, behind you. All of a sudden, there's somebody right on your tail. These scooters are just going to be a nuisance, and I think we need to be take a real hard line negotiating with them. Just because the county's going along with this, I don't think that's a reason we have to. One other thing, I don't know how they got away with this legislation, calling these things bicycles. I just see campaign contributions flowing around and some pretty extensive lobbying. This is just an embarrassment.
Dick, I think we need to be careful not to separate the policy discussion from the contractual discussion, because we may very well, of course, if the policy is not to be amended, if you vote not to allow the scooters, then we don't need to proceed with the contract. But if you agree that the policy can be amended, let's deal with that tonight, and then we can come back and fill you in on the details of a contract later. I don't want to have, I don't want to confuse the two.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. That makes sense. And in that case, I'll say, I don't want the scooters unless they really cave in on it for us. I mean, if they're going to provide a lot of money or a lot of services or some other advantage to us, but there's no advantage to us of having these scooters racing around. And it's not going to be people who need the mobility. It's going to be thrill seekers. I mean, people who have trouble walking or biking aren't going to jump on a scooter, right? So this is for kids. It's not a serious. It's not part of the intermodal transportation system. This is a recreational sport.
I think that that's a debatable opinion. I mean, I've used the scooters to get from a restaurant to a store, or in some cases from a hotel I was staying into to another part of town. And I don't think that everybody's using them to try to go crazy or anything. They are actually functional. You don't need to wait for them the way that you would need to wait for a bus. They go from door to door the way that a bus doesn't. I think there are legitimate practical uses for a scooter. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who are out there just playing around, but to generalize and say that they aren't serving an actual transit need, I think is not recognizing that there are multiple reasons that a person may choose to ride a scooter.
Okay, well, I'll agree that everything I say is debatable. But I sure
Can I get in the queue,
would
please,
like to see how this is actually playing out in other areas before we make a commitment like this.
Andy, may I get in the queue also?
Sure, I'll get you in, Bill. Ginny, Nancy,
Was Renee next?
Ginny, Nancy, Jess, Renee,
Oh, okay.
Alan,
okay.
Milton.
Yeah, okay. A couple of quick questions and then a more detailed question. The bridge over 29, you said, I believe that the county, as part of their contract, I think you said was including downtown, Gateway, Dobbin, and the bridge over 29?
Yeah, part of their permit process is they kind of created their pilot zones that they
Okay.
wanted to see. So while the legislation would allow the commercial e-scooter sharing system to be throughout the Columbia planning area, they were essentially assigning zone 1, 2, and 3 and sort of restricting where they think it will be most desired and needed in the beginning, and then sort of working from there.
Okay. I'm going to keep asking a couple of quick, short questions. So when they're doing that, is any of that county land or is it all CA land that they're doing it on?
It is a mix of county land and private land, including our own. It is entire zone areas.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of property owners, and CA actually owns lots of little pieces of land throughout Columbia.
Yeah,
So
okay, okay. All right, next question. When they come over the bridge, 29 towards Oakland Mills, what are they going to do? Take the road, take the path to Stevens Forest, then take the road, or are you going to allow them on the path system?
The system, the zones are more general than that.
And to get to Dobbin, are they going to be coming on the path system from the bridge?
Yeah, I mean the way the zones work is that all of these scooters, if they were to enter the east side of 29, would be moving through the bridge area to do so.
Yeah, but you come off the bridge, you've got to go someplace to get to Dobbin. Are they going to go through the local path system through our neighborhoods? Or they're going to use the road, as Sherry said, the bike system is very extensive, the bike lanes. Are they going to use that? Is that specific, or we don't know yet?
It's not specific because it's basically just working with an entire zone. So the zone 2, it essentially runs from Broken Land Parkway all the way up to 175, and then cuts into a little jut to get people over to the Gateway area. So it is the entirety, essentially, I think, of most of Oakland Mills and some of Owen Brown. That is not to say that we would have to allow operations in our areas there, just that those are the zones that were identified by the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question. We were talking about that you can only rent them when you're if you're 18, and it was sounding like these are more responsible adults. Yet the issue is, at least experience I've had in Marina Del Rey and Santa Monica, that they're thrown down on the ground. So when somebody, in terms of the process, somebody rents one, they're paying for that. I would assume they're liable if they don't bring the scooter back. What type of enforcement is there to hold these people accountable? Also, how do you guarantee that the scooters will have ID on them? So if somebody sees somebody hitting somebody or whatever, they're going to be able to say that was scooter number 10 or, something like that to report it to the police. Will they be marked so that they're easily identified?
Yeah, the county permit process requires that every scooter that is in operation in Howard County has a unique identification number that is clearly visible on it so that they can be uniquely identified either in operation or as they are parked.
Okay.
Operators must demonstrate how they are going to incentivize proper parking, and then there's a slew of restrictions on parking.
Okay, next to my last question, what's the length of this contract that if we were in agreement, we'd be stuck with it for how many years? I know you say we can terminate, but how many years would this contract?
The original term that we were thinking of was a period of 1 year, and then with the ability, as you said, to terminate at any time.
Okay, so my last statement or comment is, my concern here is you have a lot of specifics, and as I said before, I appreciate all the time and effort and thought you're putting into this, but we're not actually seeing that in writing, that the Spin or whatever the company is willing to sign off on that and exactly what the specifics are, so we know whether it makes sense or not for CA. And to change this policy without some conditions that we see that, I think is asking a lot of the board and our residents. We've got a lot at stake here in terms of a lot of things that have been mentioned. So how do we bridge that gap? And how do we look at maybe just downtown or just Gateway or shorten, So anyway, that's it. Okay.
Okay, Jess, and then
No,
Renee, Alan,
Nancy.
and Milton.
No, Nancy comes after Ginny.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry,
Yeah.
Dennis. Sorry, Nancy.
A lot of my questions were answered, but I still have a bunch. So they must be over 18, and we could specify a designated area like downtown, whatever downtown is comprised of. And so somebody's on one of these scooters and they're downtown, wherever, and they decide, what the heck? This is so much fun. I'm going to go a little further. Who's going to stop them? Who's going to see them and make a change? I mean, this is so not practical in my mind, unless there's actually some way of enforcing this or contacting somebody to have it enforced. And unless I see something like that, I'm not comfortable with it.
So the vehicles themselves have GPS trackers on them, and when in use, they have to ping back to the center commercial operator every 90 seconds. This is requirements
Okay.
on the permit.
That's good.
And so we could essentially require that, in the event someone using the scooter leaves the zone of comfort, you could institute a policy where that user gets pinged, you're out of the proper zone, you need to turn around and go back. The commercial operators must also have the ability to not allow trips to end outside of the proper zone, so that essentially if you are taking your scooter and you are going outside of the area you're supposed to be in, you can't stop paying to use that scooter until you return it to where you are supposed to be. So the incentive structure for the users is
financial.
And essentially the scooters are built with a GPS system that is tied to the actual vehicle, and that ping backs to the central control. All of the technical construct around what Spin or other operators could require of the scooters, it differs from various organizers, but they have the ability decide where trips end, to communicate constantly, and to try and to change the speed. So you can also, some companies also do it where if someone leaves the area you're supposed to be in, the speed slowly starts going down and down and down and down until they're basically told you're not in the proper area. So people handle it different ways, but they all have the capacity to kind of geofence these scooters to specific areas.
Okay, so somebody gets mad because I want to go another couple blocks and the damn thing won't let me. So how do I'm just going to show them, I'm going to leave it here and take off.
Well, if you end your trip, you're supposed to park it, and then that's the end of your trip. It is one of the issues that all of these kind of systems have to deal with. It's the same way that we dealt with when bike share was originally instituted. We dealt with people essentially not ending their trips the way they were supposed to. It's about education. It's about changing how people view these vehicles and how they use them. I think anytime you introduce new transportation, it does require a shift in how people think about them. But we've got pretty good examples of how it's been implemented throughout the country to rely on for how to respond to this. And I think education and training is the way to go. And then also, honestly, responding to the patterns of desire as needed. Is that if you start seeing that everyone's trying to make a specific trip that's not currently allowed in the zone, figure out why they're making that trip and how to accommodate it in a safe manner, because clearly it's a transportation need that's not being met.
Or
Okay.
they're curious. Oh, I'm not done.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
When you talked about being clearly visible, that's a very squishy, needless to say.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be something a whole heck of a lot more specific about what clearly visible is. Okay. And the term of 1 year, I guess you're currently working on a contract, which of course can't be signed until the CA board sees and approves this contract.
I believe signature on any agreement is subject to the board approving the policy changes before you tonight.
So we would have to approve it without seeing the contract is what you're looking for.
I think you guys are approving the policy changes, and then the contract is being implemented to respond to all of the concerns and issues that CA has on our operational staff side and that the board has raised.
Okay, I for one am not ready to approve anything until I see a contract. I don't want to do it the other way around. I agree with what Dick said. I think we need to see it before we can approve it.
Jess.
Well, one of my questions was answered about the term of the license agreement. And I just really wanted to make a comment that I do think we're kind of getting in the weeds. And I think the important thing is to consider the policy right now. I think changing the policy is inevitable because it is being treated like a bicycle. And I don't think it would reflect well on CA to sort of say, well, we're going to allow some bicycles, but not other, quote, bicycles. I do think I agree with all of you that, what's in the terms of the contract is very important. But I also agree think that the staff is really capable and they seem to be anticipating and understanding a lot of the concerns that the board has and the questions that we have. So my suggestion would be, just in the interest of time, that we make a decision about the policy with the understanding that we're, to me, essentially validating something that the state has already sort of handed down, and then talk to staff about how to handle the contract. And if we want to see it, then we can see it. But I also, believe that staff is pretty capable and is going to make sure that they're not putting us in a position where we're going to have to spend a bunch of money or create problems for CA to deal with.
Renee.
So I agree with Dick. And I have just one other question, and that is, if we allow these scooters on our pass system, how does that change our replacement of the pass? Because those scooters are going to wear out or pass quicker than my little tootsies going down the road. Has
I would have-
anybody looked at that cost?
I would have to defer to Dennis on any impact. I cannot imagine it's greater than the impact that bicycles have on the current path system, but I would have to defer to him on that.
Alan? Oh, Renee, you done?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
Well, just on that, I also had a question about path maintenance. I'd certainly want that to be considered in whatever contract. And while I get that an individual scooter may not have more than an individual bike, but if this adds another mode of transportation, it's got an additive effect. It's not that it's going to replace bicycles necessarily, it's going to add some things to it. I would also say that in your analysis, I agree, Jessica, by the way, I'm impressed with how knowledgeable, and you've become an expert on scooters, so I don't know if that's something you wanted to become or if it's just was thrust upon you. That there may be a rise. Right now, we don't have people using our paths to go to work, but that's because walking on a path to go to work may not be the best way to go to work, but taking a scooter on a path may become the best way to go to work. So we may be adding some work trips that we don't have now simply because we have a new mode of transportation to use on the path. I would agree with Dick, except that, Dick, you were concerned with putting the cart before the horse. I didn't know we allowed horses on the path, so that's another question.
Only
It
motorized
seems to-
horses.
Only motorized horses with a seat. It seems to me I think we're talking about two things tonight. And if we're not, I need to be disabused of that notion and make sure that I'm clear about what we're voting on or potentially voting on. I think we can change the policy to allow recreational, individually owned scooters, and not necessarily approve commercial scooters. Those seem to me to be two very different things. And the policy change that's before us with the recommendations from staff, which I think I agreed with them all, although I'm hearing some things that are giving me some concern from other board members. I don't see anything in there about allowing commercial use. So I think we need to separate those two. We can vote on the one and then decide whether we want to just blanket approve the staff going forward to promulgate a contract, or whether we want to say go forth and start negotiations, but we reserve the right to approve any contract. But to me, those are separate issues. I'm done.
Milton?
Yes, I have just a quick few points. I asked the board, please look at this in the big picture, because looking at the policy gives you an opportunity to make any changes that you think is in the best interest of the Columbia Association. When I say the big picture, keep in mind that the Columbia Association is the third largest property owner in the downtown area. So the board, even if you say no to this, you're not going to keep the scooters off of CA property. You're just not going to be able to do that. Just take for example, someone living in the Juniper Apartments in the Meriwether district, wanting to go to the mall or wanting to go to the community college. They're going to cross CA property somewhere along the way. And we don't want to be that entity that's trying to prevent that, because we can't prevent it. They're going to cross CA's property somewhere in one of those trips. And think about it from the point of view that Columbia supported the downtown plan to make it an urbanized area, to make it the downtown for basically for Howard County. And this is part of it becoming an urbanized, high density area. So that's the big picture I'm asking you, because you're not going to keep the e-scooters off, because right now, it's my understanding, Howard Hughes Corporation, the mall, the community college, the hospital, all of them are on board with having the e-scooters in basically the downtown area.
Shari, and then we're going to have to wrap it up here. Shari, you're muted.
All right, sorry. Well, Milton, I think you make a good point about the people who are supporting this are all people who are centered in downtown. And that is the more urbanized area, by no means urban yet, but moving in that direction. And that's where bike lanes and things of that kind become more significant. That really doesn't have to do with the other villages. And so I think we have to make a distinction here. I've not heard from any residents, quite frankly, who've been in favor of this, but maybe that's just because King's Contrivance is one of the more southern and more suburban of the villages. But you know, so I think we have to take that into account. So the idea that Janet put forward about, and Ginny also, about a pilot project in downtown is beginning to make more sense to me as far as being able to see what the effects are, who is actually going to use these e-scooters, whether they're going to be used for real transportation purposes or just recreation. And I guess the other question that I had, the concern is around the lakefronts. Our lakes, our pathways around the lakes are being very heavily used, particularly now during this period when more people are working at home. So we have fewer people going into offices downtown. We have many more people at home and using the pathways as kind of a break, I think, during the course of the day. So we have to anticipate more traffic, and we may even have to anticipate some environmental kinds of issues. If you've gone around Lake Kit, you know that there are days when bikes are going by there, and even though we have lanes, nobody's staying in any lane. So I think this could be fleshed out in greater detail. I would certainly like to see the county's bike lanes incorporated and let that be the major thrust. I mean, we are all county taxpayers as well. So the cost of a large scale system should not be borne just by our lien payers. And so often we are being asked to do things that in the big picture don't seem to be really about a business model at all. I would like to see something that either negotiates with the company for some kind of payment agreement that brings the county in as enforcement, so we don't have to pay to hire staff to do things that they should really not be doing. And that really maps out whether this is going to be oriented towards commercial and you know, restaurants and things of that kind, or whether it's going to be zipping around, as Dick said, just for fun.
Okay. So we actually have this on for a vote, and as Alan said, there are actually two different recommendations from staff.
Well, Andy, could I make a motion here?
Well, let me just answer Alan's question.
Okay.
Make sure everybody understands. The first recommendation from staff that we have is basically a change in policy to allow e-scooters. Okay. And then the second one is to address the issue of commercial e-scooters. And I know we've been talking back and forth about both of them, but as Alan said, there are actually two separate recommendations. Is that right, Jessica?
That's correct. The first is just simply an adjustment of CA's open space policies that already allow personal mobility vehicles and electronic scooters to now specify that it also allows e-scooters, so that our policy is reconciled with how the state of Maryland defines these vehicles. And then the second policy change that we had recommended to the board is to change our policy to allow commercial e-scooter sharing companies to operate on CA pathways subject to a license agreement.
Andy?
Okay, Dick wanted to make a motion. Ginny, real quick.
Well, a question on that. I don't see the difference between my owning an e-scooter and a commercial company if you're going to allow them in all the pathways. It's the same problem. So I guess maybe Dick's motion, I hope, is to limit it to downtown and Gateway. Okay.
Dick, you wanted to make a motion.
Yeah, my motion is to authorize Jessica to continue to talk with the scooter companies and come back to us with a proposed contract that the board can review. And I know Jessica, I know she'll take a real tough stand on this, and we'll hold their feet to the fire and make sure that we have something that we're comfortable with.
Okay, that addresses commercial e-scooters.
Well,
Well, what about the first recommendation?
I say let's deal with the commercial side of it, and then we can talk about the rest of it.
If they're not allowed on our pathways, it's ridiculous to enter into a contract with a commercial entity.
What my thinking is, if we go into a contract with the commercial companies, then we can open it up to privately owned scooters. And in the meantime, let's just not let anybody scoot.
Dick, keep in mind, you're not letting them, they're gonna happen anyway. We're just trying to put terms in there that clarifies what CA's expectations are.
Okay, Milton, my thinking is that if we say scooters are not authorized on our pathways and somebody rides a scooter on our pathways, hits a log, goes flying into the woods and breaks their neck, we're not going to get sued because we've already said that scooters are not allowed. So we have a liability issue here.
Okay,
Question?
so is there a second to Dick's motion?
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, let me try to make sure I get this right, Dick, so.
Question, discussion?
All right, sure, Jenny, discussion.
Yeah, okay, quick discussion. Are we saying then, staff, that we cannot, because of this change in the state law that said an e-scooter is the same as a bike and the same with the county law, are you saying that we cannot legally prohibit them from CA path system? I hope not. I hope that's not true.
The change in state legislature defines electronic scooters as the same as bicycles as it applies to the public right of way.
Right.
When staff outlined the reason we are recommending a policy change for the CA privately held lands is that so much of our lands are throughout Columbia, and they make up so much of Columbia's transportation system, both for trails that we own and maintain, those that we don't maintain, but that we provide easements for on our land, and frankly, tons of sidewalks that are throughout Columbia that are on CA land, but that are in the public realm, that we as staff believe that these scooters will already be operating all over CA's lands without CA's policy reflecting changes that are happening at the state or the community level. So our recommendation is to essentially make sure that our pathways operate the same that the public right-of-way systems operate.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I was just trying to make it clear that in fact we can control what happens on our land. We're not governed by the state law or the county.
Legally, we can prohibit them.
Okay.
Functionally, I think it's unlikely.
No, I understand the difference, but I just want to make sure we understand we can do it if we wanted to. Whether it's reasonable or not is a separate issue. Would you accept a friendly amendment that would limit this to the downtown and the Gateway area? I know the county's looking at Dobbin, but I'm not quite sure how that connection is there. But just the whatever we would define as the downtown area and whatever we would define as the Gateway area, to allow for this pilot to occur so that we can see if the conditions we've set for the 1 year with the provider or providers work or not. or if they have negative or positive, whatever implications. And not to
Jenny-
mention our residents that are trying to use the paths as well, and whether there are any, negative ramifications. Would you consider that as a friendly amendment, Dick?
That's a lot of amendment there.
No, it's just to limit the area to.
Limit the
downtown or
consideration for downtown, yeah.
Or
I-
gate,
But
and gateway.
But I think Jessica knows where the board is on some of these issues, like how the bike's going to be collected and how the GPS would limit the, she knows where we are. I think she could negotiate something along those lines.
Okay, then I will ask for an amendment to your amendment that says, however, the area to be covered will be limited to downtown and gateway, and it's period. I don't know if there's a second for that or not.
I'll second.
I thought Dick already agreed to that.
I wasn't sure with what he just said.
I wasn't sure exactly what you just said. But anyway, no, I'm happy with that, and I can live with
Okay.
that.
Before we get it. All right, Renee and Shari, and then we're gonna have to
And
wrap up.
I'd like to get in the queue too.
All right. Renee?
I'm fine.
Oh. Okay, Shari and Alan.
Yeah, I had a question. Can where CA sidewalks are concerned, particularly where we've made all those cuts for bicycles, can that be treated for this 1-year contract as sort of a temporary easement? So that we allow this as an experiment for a year in order to evaluate, just like we have allowed companies to come in and fix things. We do that with the electric company, whatever. These are not permanent until we see how this has worked out. So we are not, everybody is engaged in this as an experiment.
Sorry, I would say that the license agreement that staff has been working on is not an easement. It is a license agreement that allows permission for them to operate without having any rights to our lands.
Okay, so it's just operating, but what does that do as far as, I'm still not sure as far as liability is concerned.
We would be indemnified because the license agreement also includes indemnification areas.
All right, so that's built into the contract.
Yes.
All right, Alan and Renee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I propose an amendment to this proposal that we add at the beginning the language that's on page 2 of the staff's memo entitled CA Policy Electronic Scooter Operations on CA Pathways, and that we add points A, B, and C with the addition of, in point A, it would say CA policy specifically allow the use of privately owned electronic low-speed scooters, etc. Page 2, it's page 38 of the packet. It's page 2 of the first memo that staff put before us. It's their recommendations for just general questions of CA's open space policy as it relates to scooters.
And you're putting the word private in, right?
Yes.
Privately owned between of and electronic.
Question for
in
Alan.
Point A.
Question for
If
Alan.
there's no second, then we don't need to continue.
Well,
I'll second it, Alan.
okay, question
Okay.
then. Alan, do you know in the privately owned whether there's a limitation of 20 miles an hour, which is in the state code and the county code?
I
Can they go
make an
faster than
assumption.
20 miles an hour?
I make an assumption, and if it's the incorrect assumption, we need to change it. That when the staff is using the word scooters, they're talking about ones that are defined by the state law, and so that speed limit is built into that, I believe.
Yeah, well, maybe Jessica knows more about it than, whether In fact, there is a 20-mile-an-hour ability, and they can't go above that on a private. I don't know. Do you, Jessica? Or-
I can only confirm that electronic scooters are classified as those that cannot exceed 20 miles an hour in the state, the transportation code, but I cannot speak to what may be on the market privately and how fast those can go.
Yeah, because that's important. If, you know, if
Yes.
the limitation is 20 miles and you can buy one that goes 25, which was the original state bill that was presented.
So if we added another clause in there, classifying and considering them to be same as bicycles per Maryland statute, whatever the proper, or council statute, whatever it is, that specifies all that.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that.
then it's a level playing field is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The second memo that came out actually is the policy language change that we're recommending, and I think it does this already.
What?
I'm not sure what second memo there were two memos in the packet. Are you talking about the second memo in the packet?
Yeah,
About the
page
contract detail
43, I believe.
of the
I
packet.
think
Yeah.
it says
But
electronic
that's about
scooters. Is
commercial.
defined. No, this is the policy language under A that refers to open space policy.
I see. It
Yeah.
doesn't, so it's split into two here. Okay.
Yeah, the upper is the older policy language, and then the new policy language that we are proposing and recommending.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it says, you know, as defined under Maryland law.
You're right. I was looking at the
But does this specify privately owned?
I don't believe that this policy specifies privately owned as written.
Okay. Well, if you think this is the more updated language than from the previous memo that I was quoting, I'm okay, that had points A, B, and C. I'm happy using this as long as privately owned is put in the appropriate place. And then we can deal with a contract and approve that and expand the policy once that contract is approved.
Well, this says subject to the limits of technology in terms of the speed limits on the first bullet. The state clearly says 20 miles, doesn't it?
Are you looking at page 43 of the packet, or are you looking back at 38
I'm
of the
looking
packet?
at the memo that's June 18th as opposed to the May memo.
I think, Jenny, that is the memo that details how staff believes that the license agreement would address staff's concerns related to commercial e-scooter operations. Page 43 is solely about CA's open space policy, irregardless of what is happening with commercial e-scooters.
And it specifies may not be ridden faster than 20 miles an hour and must yield to pedestrians.
And then we actually authorize it that they may not be ridden at in excess of 15 miles an hour on our pathways.
Okay, Alan, so basically your amendment is what Janet put up on the screen, just with the word any privately owned motorized conveyance, right?
Correct.
Okay, so can we take a vote on Alan's amendment, which you see before you with the wording says privately owned, operating any privately owned motorized conveyance? So because I can't read all that, there's no way I'm going to be able to read all that.
I'm still unclear about what motion we're actually voting on. Is it Dick's motion with Jenny's amendment and Alan's amendment?
Just my amendment to his motion. We vote on amendments first and then the amended motion.
Right. So Alan is amending Dick's motion to incorporate this language. All right.
At the beginning.
I'm going to take the vote on the amendment. Hopefully everybody's read it. I'm going to do this by vote, by roll call. Janet, this is the amendment.
Yes.
Okay. Shari,
No.
Jenny,
Yeah.
Dick,
I have to say no because I don't see, my amendment had to do with negotiating with the commercial users. And this is about private users. So to me, this is a separate motion, not an amendment.
okay, Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
I'm gonna say no because I also think it's a separate issue.
Jess,
No.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Ugh, yes.
Andy, yes.
Andy, I'm gonna change to no on that, okay? Ginny?
What are they voting?
I think it's,
All right, 5-5, so the motion fails. So let's take a vote on Dick's motion. Okay, so Dick's motion is just to,
Renee, you're on mute if you're trying to talk to us.
I muted.
all right, so back to Dick's motion, which was basically to have staff go back and negotiate a contract for commercial scooters and bring it back to the board Right.
No, Andy?
on Gateway and downtown, related to Gateway and downtown.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that was a friendly amendment. It was accepted, yeah.
Right. Does that sound right, Dick?
That sounds fine.
All right. So we're going to vote on Dick's motion. Janet,
Yes.
Shari,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jess,
No.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Andy, yes. Okay, that passes. All right. Now, I would like to make a motion, since you guys said it had to be separate, that we adopt the same language Alan had, except privately owned, with the word privately owned. Because you thought it was supposed to be a separate motion. So Alan, you want to make that a motion?
I'm happy to make the motion. I just want to make clear because I thought you said except for that language, that it is specifically about private.
Yeah, privately owned. Right.
Yes,
privately
thank
owned.
you. I make that motion.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, can you say that as the motion? What exactly is the motion?
To adopt the language,
On page 43 of the packet, it's an unnumbered page 4 of the staff's memo of June 18th. It's titled New Policy Language,
Okay, and this would just apply to,
privately owned.
Okay.
privately owned.
Privately owned only. All right. You ready?
I have a
Janet,
question.
Oh,
I have a
sure.
question about this.
yes.
My question is if we adopt this with the language of privately owned and then later go back and negotiate a contract with a commercial entity, do we have to go back and amend the policy?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
okay, so my second question is, could it be argued that scooters that are owned by a commercial entity would also qualify as privately owned because they are owned by a company and not by an individual?
I'd be happy to say owned and operated.
well, can you say personally owned?
So may I?
Renee,
Go ahead.
So I kind of understand your question, Jess, and it's actually a great question, but I'm confused how we can expect our staff to negotiate a contract when they don't have the parameters for the contract negotiation. And that's what the policy would give them.
Which policy? I'm not
Any
clear what you're
policy. Well, if you only have a policy about privately owned, however you're going to define that, scooters, you don't have a policy about commercial scooters.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
that
I-
would be in the contract.
But it's hard to we're giving them contract to negotiate with no parameters. You know, it's one thing if you say, I'll go up to $1 million for something, and you send your negotiator out and they come back with 500,000. Oh, great. But if you don't tell them what your parameters are, they're destined to fail.
No,
Well,
I
or
agree
we're
with you,
giving them
Renee.
parameters that aren't realistic because we're asking them to
Right.
negotiate something that's contrary to the policy that we've approved.
Right.
The
Andy?
first part of their memo does deal with a lot of specifics.
Ginny,
I understand where Alan's coming from in terms of an equity issue, but I think it may be premature. I think we need to allow the staff to negotiate and show us the contract for the commercial, and then we just piggyback that with the private owned. If we're saying the private now, we're not going to be the ones putting all those conditions on the private one. So I don't think we can do that at this point. Is the way I look at it, the way I'm going to be voting.
All right, so Alan, what I hear now is you said privately owned and operated, correct?
If that would help assuage them and to make it clearer that we're not talking about because Joe Smith owns
Right,
a scooter company.
yeah.
Then
All right. I would like to take the roll call then on
Well-
that motion
well,
for now.
I have a question though, because I'm not clear what parameters people are talking about. And I could be persuaded if I understood that. As I understand it, these scooters are being seen as bicycles by the state. And so we could say, yeah, okay, for some kid or whatever, or adult, whoever has a scooter, you can use them on our pathways, just as you can use your bicycle on the pathways. I'm not clear what other parameters we'd be, other than the definition that's in there and the specifics of the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit and the yielding to pedestrians is all in there. Not sure what else we'd want. As to the commercial thing, I get it, that we're not giving the staff much guidance about what that contract might look like. But I would trust them to negotiate and then bring it back. And if we decide they didn't make it, then we give them feedback and they go back and renegotiate.
Okay, Andy?
All right, let's, we
Andy,
gotta
can
move
I
on. Real quick.
respond to Alan? I don't see the difference between a privately owned scooter and a commercial scooter. The point is, let's see how this scooter, electric scooter, works on our path system. We do not have to give people a right to use it, whether it's privately owned or commercially owned on our path system. So my point is, they cannot do that except downtown and in Gateway if we move ahead on that. So even if it's a private scooter, we should not be expanding it all over. We're going to have the same problem with our residents if you allow that. So I'll be voting against this. Okay.
So, Shari, do you have your, Shari, and then Renee?
Yeah, I was going to say very much what Ginny is saying. The amendment, as I'm hearing it from Alan, would allow e-scooters anywhere on our pathways, subject to just those couple of changes that have been worked out, and would not necessarily restrict them. And so what this is saying is e-scooters can go anywhere. And I think what we've been talking about has been the creation of parameters. I think we've put up some very clear kinds of boundaries that the staff can now take back and talk to people about, because it's the commercial operator in downtown that has stimulated this entire discussion. That's what the change in policy is about. It's about the commercial, really. If we can't get an agreement around that we feel is safe and that takes into account all of our stakeholders, then we don't need anything to be changed.
All right, I'm gonna take the vote. So on Alan's motion, Janet,
Could you just give us the motion one more time,
Andy,
please?
Andy, no one knows what the motion
Yeah,
is.
what is the motion?
to adopt
The motion, if you look in your packet,
Yeah, Janet, could you put it up again, please? Oh, she's not there. All right,
how do you, I could share my screen, I just don't know how to share the screen
I
on
just
this.
have to find it again. I don't have it up anymore. I mean, I don't have it.
okay.
Are we looking at the policy language at this point?
Yeah, the new policy language.
Page 38 of the, 43 of the packet.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
so
It's
there's
this
no policy
with the
language.
addition of privately owned and operated after A before motorized on the third line. A privately owned and operated.
Which is then allowing them on our entire pathway system.
Yeah. To me, the
As
idea is
opposed
that
to
this
the
could be the
pilot.
pilot. We see how it works
No,
with
this is, no.
kids
Once,
tooling around
once
on
you
them.
open the door, it's hard to close it.
I
Okay,
think you need
I'm
to do
gonna-
the pilot first.
I'm gonna call the vote because we've talked about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Janet,
No.
Shari,
No.
Ginny,
No,
Dick,
No.
Lynn,
No.
Nancy,
No.
Jess.
No, but only because I don't believe we should put in the privately owned language.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Andy, yes. Okay, motion fails. 7-3. All right. We're on to the next one, which is Janet's form. Thank you all. Thank you.
Wait, Andy, don't we still have to take a vote on the original recommendation?
We did. We did take.
No.
We
a
just
vote.
did. That was the staff's
No.
recommendation.
I would,
It
I would
failed.
like to make a motion that we adopt the policy as written by staff with no changes.
I second that.
All right.
I would like to add a friendly amendment that we limit it to town center and gateway. Would you accept that?
Yes.
No, I have to say, I think it's impossible to enforce, and so I don't think it's realistic to add that because they're gonna be everywhere anyway.
All right. So the
What's the-
motion is to adopt the language as written by staff.
Andy, what is the difference, or Jess, what is the difference between what Dick's motion did 20 minutes ago that covered all of this and gave the staff direction and how to come back to us, and what you're proposing, other than they wouldn't come back to us, I guess is the difference?
No, my proposal has nothing to do with the contract piece. It is simply to adopt the policy that they've suggested that would put us in line with what the state is doing. The contract issue to me is a totally separate issue that we can address at a later date, but I think that the policy as written is adequate.
So that would allow them to go any place on our path system, treat it as a bike.
Correct.
It would be the same as a bike.
Correct. And I don't want the distinction of privately owned and operated because I feel that then it doesn't give staff the sort of authority. It sets up a situation where they're negotiating a contract that is already in violation of the policy that we've adopted. So it's just a little more general and vague. We still can set limits within the contract negotiations as to where the commercial ones can go and where, all that stuff that we're concerned about, we can still deal with that as they negotiate the contract. This would just be so that they are allowed to go anywhere that a bike is allowed to go. Doesn't mean that we're allowing commercial entities to come in, and it just means essentially that at this point, without a negotiation or a signed contract with a commercial provider, it would basically mean the same thing as what Alan proposed, because right now since we don't have a contract with a commercial entity, only privately owned scooters could be used on the pathways right now until we decide to allow a commercial owner to come in.
Could
Does
I
that
ask you
make
a question,
sense?
Jeff? Well, could I
Yeah.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it your belief that if we adopt this, that staff could, on their own efforts, sign a contract with a commercial entity without bringing that contract back to the board?
I mean, I think they're capable of doing it. I don't know, because they clearly know what they're talking about. If the board felt that they wanted to see it first, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with that. But, that's,
Well, that was the intent of why, for me, putting privately owned, so that
I
we
totally
couldn't
get
get a commercial without the
Andy.
board approving a change in the policy.
Let's go back. Let me just explain something. We already voted to let staff negotiate a commercial contract and can bring it back to the board. So
Yes.
whatever contract they are negotiating is going to come back to the board because we already voted on that.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
I
That
didn't
was
realize
This
Dick-
that.
would
that
be
was Dick's
simply
motion.
approving the policy as they have suggested,
Right.
with the understanding that obviously the contract is a totally separate issue. So it essentially allows what you were wanting to allow, Alan, but without forcing us to have to go back to the policy if we decide at a later date to work with a commercial vendor. Does that make sense? Because then the policy would prohibit a commercially owned scooter, so then we'd have to go back and change the policy again.
All right.
I get you.
But
Thank you.
Jess,
Can I just-
it doesn't
can I
limit
just-
the area
we gotta-
covered.
We
No,
gotta-
it doesn't limit
we gotta
the area
move on
because
here.
I don't believe the area should be limited. I don't
No,
think
no,
it's
no.
realistic.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to make it clear to the whole board, the difference between yours and
All
Dick's is this does not
Right,
limit it
but-
to 10.
But do you
Okay.
understand that when we negotiate a contract with a commercial provider, we
understand.
can limit the commercial ones
I
to a
understand.
particular area? This would allow residents to use the entire pathway system. A
Right.
Renee and-
commercial entity is a totally different thing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree
just
that
want
that's
to
a good
Okay.
idea at this point.
that.
That's the only difference.
Right.
Even
Re-
privately owned.
Renee,
I just want to make a comment here. E-scooters is something that is going to happen whether we want to believe it or not. Okay, I'm on the pathway system every day, lots of miles, and those scooters are already out there. So we have to figure out a way to safely and effectively manage the e-scooters in a way that benefits both the residents who are walking and talking and those that are riding to the benefit of the greatest number of people. I think that the policy is written is pretty good. I mean, we may want to tweak it at some point down the road, but we are not going to be able to stop e-scooters. I mean, are people going to sit on the pathways going, I just saw a guy go by and dial 911? I mean, I just think we have to be more realistic about the situation.
Exactly, Renee.
Shari. Shari?
Yeah. And I think you've made a good point, which illustrates the lack of enforcement that CA has. We have no enforcement. And the only possible enforcement would be to have this restricted to a pilot project, which could then be evaluated by the board and staff and the community as well. So
Right, but
allowing,
that's not related to this motion. That's the contract.
no, that's exactly what I'm saying. If we approve this, then e-scooters are available to anyone everywhere.
Right,
Right.
right.
But they're already riding on our pass system.
They're not everywhere.
Well,
Oh,
but this would only be essentially because we have no relationship with a commercial vendor, it would only be people who own them themselves. If some kid goes out and gets an electric scooter, they can ride it anywhere.
All
We're
right,
not allowing commercial entities to come in until we negotiate a contract.
all right, let me just take the vote. Anything else? Okay. So Jess's motion is to adopt this new policy language. Janet,
No,
Shari,
No.
Jenny,
No,
Dick,
No,
Lynn,
Yes.
Nancy,
No.
Jess,
Yes,
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes,
Andy, yes.
Every 5-5.
5-5 fails.
okay,
All right.
time to move on.
Can we move on?
no, can I recommend that we adopt the same policy but limit it to Gateway and Town Center?
Oh, God.
now let's move on.
Is there a second to Janet's motion?
We spent an hour and a half on this.
well, but then what is staff supposed to do at this point? I mean, we're leaving them with no direction.
no.
The direction is to negotiate a contract and to bring it to
Bring
the
it back.
board. And if the board accepts the contract, we will fix the policy. That's it.
Okay, Okay.
That's what we approved.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Let's move on. Janet's discussion, proposed new topics for board discussion forum. Janet, is there anything you want to say?
No,
All right. Is there a motion to approve Janet's form for the board's use?
So moved.
Is that Ginny?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second,
Wait a minute. Who seconded?
Sherry.
Jerry.
Sorry. All right. Is there any discussion? Does anybody oppose this? All right. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it.
my pleasure.
So may I ask a question about it? Are we going to put that like in Google Docs or something to fill out
Yeah, we can put,
or somewhere?
yeah, somewhere.
All right, just let us know. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to board discussion, future of Columbia Association focused on 2022. Shari, I'm going to turn this part over to you because you had the ideas and that.
Okay, I just had a question about whether we can use that form tonight since we've approved it.
Yeah, we approved it.
Okay. All right, because I have something that I would like to present to the board using that form, but we can do it at whatever point.
All right, let's move on to you.
Okay. Because we are heading into our next discussion about budget, the document that I sent out to the board is just to try and get us started in talking about some of the assumptions and challenges that we're facing. So sometimes we kind of get bogged down at that first budget discussion. And I think that if we can take a look at these 5 questions, we'll be able to move through much more quickly when we actually sit down to do the real budgeting work on the next budget. Okay, so as I said, we can't start with solutions. We need to understand and clearly state the problems. We can start by asking ourselves a series of questions to gain a perspective on how CA might focus its effort for the future. And I think the question we really start with is question 1, which is, who are our stakeholders? In a community our size, we have a lot of stakeholders. So if we don't have a common understanding, how can we plan to serve these stakeholders in the future? And it seemed to me that we can sort of think of this as categories, 3 categories. Primary stakeholders are those that we're charged to directly serve per our mission statement. We have strategic plan that is based on a mission statement, vision, mission, strategic goals and objectives. So for example, we are a homeowners association. We serve the homeowners who pay the annual charge. These are primary stakeholders. Secondary stakeholders, those we want to reach out to in the larger community with our programs and services. So for example, there are families that live on out parcels that make use of CA's before and after school programs. So they are not annual charge payers, but they are people who are using our programs and services. This is part of reaching out to the larger community. Same thing is true for our gyms, our camps, our programs and services. And then there are allies. Allies are those who impact the community, the county, the state, who can help CA to serve the greater good. So think of this as concentric rings going out: primary, secondary, and then the larger community. So,
Sorry, could I just make
Yeah.
a bit of an amendment? You specified homeowners, and you
Yep.
specified our mission. Even more foundational than our mission and our bylaws is our charter. And the first point of our charter talks about Columbia and the general welfare of its people, which would be more than just homeowners. It would also be renters. It would also be people who work here, play here, perhaps play here, and perhaps businesses.
okay, so that's a great point. And what I was thinking, what we could do is, as you're thinking about primary, secondary, and stakeholders, let's just brainstorm who those folks might be. Let's make it as concrete as possible. So I just gave one example. You're giving another example of a primary stakeholder. And can you put that in 1 or 2 words, Alan?
The people of Columbia.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Who else are primary stakeholders for us?
If I may,
Yeah, Milton?
the commercial property owners pay 35% of our annual charge. We got to include them in there.
Okay, so the businesses that are on Columbia property, CA property.
And the workers.
Do we have to include them as primary, or could they be secondary?
They've always been included, I think, as primary. They get the same rates, for instance, in joining CA facilities and things like that. They serve on our boards in some of the villages. I know we have 2, we have a wonderful renter on our village board. I would say primary.
I thought we were talking about businesses now, not renters.
Oh, did you mean renters? Did you mean renters, Lynn?
Okay, I'm sorry. Renters, and I think workers and businesses. It's all the same thing. Businesses, business workers. If you work in Columbia, you get Columbia rates.
Okay. Anybody else? Who else is a primary stakeholder that is directly impacted at our mission? We serve them directly. We work with them directly. Anybody?
I would say we only have one primary stakeholder, and that is the people, the residents of Columbia. That's our primary. Those are the people who we represent, and that's who we serve. Everybody else, the businesses, they're there to serve the people. They're there to provide employment. They're there to provide services. And we work with them so they're able to do that. But the businesses, they're there as support. They're not primary stakeholders.
But they're lien payers. How can they not be primary?
They are paying for the privilege of being able to serve our audience and to make money off of our primary audience.
Dick, I'm willing to bet you if you told any of those commercial property owners this is a privilege, they say, take away my privilege.
All right, can I just intervene here in terms of, the time that we have? We really want to try to focus, use this hour that we have, not to debate, but to throw out ideas. And there may be different ideas. So if you can sum up in a word or 2 or a sentence, who you think, this is more of a brainstorming exercise. There are no rights or wrongs. We just want to collect all of this. So who else? Where would the villages fit?
Yeah,
Well,
the
the village-
villages are certainly a primary stakeholder.
The villages help us serve the residents. They are an auxiliary tool that we have to serve the residents.
All right, so CA is in direct contact with the villages.
We should be.
They should be.
Okay, so is there that close relationship? Yes. Okay, who are some secondary stakeholders? Those we want to reach out to with our programs and services.
Sherry, I think the people that are living in, say, Clarksville and, well, out of Columbia that use our facilities, we wouldn't be able to function. Our clubs would not be able to function without them.
Okay, so they're surrounding communities
Yeah.
that are not on CA property per se, but they are part of the larger community and they use our programs and services.
Yeah, and actually some of them are like out parcels within Columbia, surrounded by Columbia. Yeah, so they're all over.
You could call them neighbors.
Okay, what was that, Lynn?
You could call them neighbors.
Yeah, they certainly are. And so many of our communities are interwoven with the out parcels, but we all go down the same roads. Our kids all go to the same schools. We all shop at the same places. So certainly we are interconnected with them. Okay, so out parcels. Who else?
How about people who visit? Who come to Columbia from outside to shop, to attend concerts, to do other things.
Okay. All right. Are they folks that we want to get to use our programs and services?
Sure.
Sure.
If they're paying for them.
Yeah.
Okay. So in fact, we do have people that come in from Montgomery. We have people who come in from neighboring counties who use our gyms. There are people who are part of businesses here who don't live here, but they do use our programs and services. Okay, so that would be secondary. Anybody else? Who else occupies that concentric, that secondary ring? Okay.
What about vendors, different companies that we do business with?
Okay, so CA purchases from vendors that are not necessarily in Columbia, but they are important to our operation. And they are people that we can treat as clients and customers because they're part of our reason for being.
Yeah, but that doesn't really fit the definition you've given of what a secondary stakeholder is, because we're not reaching out to them with our programs and services. We're using them to help us do our programs and services as vendors.
But we could.
Okay, so that's an interesting.
Well, then they fit in businesses, yeah, okay.
Let's not debate now. Let's just throw them out because we will have time to think about this.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that we're thinking about, this is what brainstorming is doing. Let's think about this and where things might fall. Who are some of our allies? Those who
Legislators,
impact-
state legislators, county legislators, federal legislators, in terms of trying to get some grants, et cetera, funding, or
The state.
legislation, or not get the legislation killed.
School board,
Legislators,
school system.
school system, good. Okay.
Police, fire, police, those services.
Police, fire, great. Who else?
Health department right now.
Yeah.
How about just all the county services? Because all the county services provide service to Columbia.
Yeah.
How about the churches, synagogues, etc.?
Okay, religious.
Community, like nonprofit, community-oriented organizations.
Yep, nonprofits. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, are there private companies or organizations that we also like?
Arts groups, things like
Yes.
that, cultural
Okay.
arts.
Okay, great.
Cultural arts, yeah.
Those nonprofits.
Some are, I'm sure.
Some not.
Maybe
Not all.
most are. Mhm. Okay, so we have a lot of potential allies. And I'm sure if we thought this through, which we will again, we'd come up with more. But this is just a way of looking at the question of who do we serve, and setting priorities. The second question was about our organizational values and principles. What are CA's values and guiding principles? If we don't know what our values are, how can we adequately serve the community as far as our mission is concerned? And how can we tell our team members what to focus on, and how do we measure our success? So, what do you think CA's values currently are? I think I mentioned to you, I took a look at the website, and I wrote down a bunch of words that I thought were sort of descriptive of CA. This is coming from the website. And here are some key words, and you throw in more of them. Exceptional, amazing, friendly, community, family friendly, unique, diverse, sustainability, quality, variety. Are those our values?
I'd add
I didn't.
inclusive.
Okay.
Some of
then-
them felt like adjectives, but not values. I mean, to say amazing, amazing what? Or there's 3 or
Okay.
4 of them that were like that. Didn't feel like values to me.
Oh,
I think respect for the land,
What did you hear?
transparency,
Transparency. Okay.
and respect for the
sorry.
land.
I sent around just before the meeting a proposed list of values. And I put them in the context of of Rouse's guiding principles. And I suggest that maybe that would be an interesting place to start. It's just a draft. I just sketched it out this afternoon. But I think if you took a look at it, you might see a nice way to categorize our values.
Can I
And Dick,
interrupt
can
you?
you-
Somebody has a radio or something on, so if
No,
they
that's
could,
Sherry's line. We get feedback from Sherry's line, and since she's
Sherry,
not-
can you
I'm
mute
sorry.
your line, please? Sherry, I mean,
Are you talking to me, Janet?
no.
your line typically provides feedback. I don't know why, but it often provides feedback.
Okay, I'll try to be aware of that. Yeah, Renee?
I have your thing in front of me, Dick. I'm gonna just say that making a profit is not a value.
Did you see how I explained that?
Yeah, yeah, but I think we need to, I think I understand financial stability.
That was
But-
what, that, it was more than that. It was his idea, Rouse's idea was to use this as a demonstration of how you can do a planned community and make it work without subsidizing it, that it was self-supporting. And that was the idea there. But
Right.
I'm just saying, take a look and we can discuss it. This isn't,
Well,
not
I think-
everybody's read it, so let's move on.
Okay, can I ask you, Dick, can you summarize those? I think there were 4 points. Can you summarize those 4 points, just in a phrase?
Okay, the four points, and this shows up repeatedly in Rouse's speeches and writing. He said there were 4 things that he had in mind when he created Columbia. And I don't have my text in front of me right now, but the first one is to create a complete city. And there are a list of values that are attached to creating a complete city.
What are those values?
Off the top of my head, they are the idea that you would encourage having a bunch of amenities, different amenities, cultural, economic, whatever. And there are a number of things, but I like I said, I don't have it in front of me right now.
Okay,
the
would
third-
diversity describe one of those?
Yes, diversity is in there. Oh, here it is. Somebody brought that up. Thank you. There it is. Build a complete city, and that is it is a value to have a high density urban center, sound planning, protection through architectural covenants. This is a value. Structure the core around sound planning, protection through architect. Okay. This is so small. My glasses don't work this well. Wait a minute. Let me.
All right, so can we say planning? I heard you say planning. Is that a
Planning, village centers.
a core value?
Yeah, and encourage out parcels to get into the program. The second main point was respect the environment. The values that come out of that is encourage environmental sensitivity, sustainable enjoyment of the natural world, manage our natural resources with care, provide services to residents that will help them manage stormwater, runoff, invasive species. This is the type of thing, these are the type of values that would fit under that. The next one is create a place where people can grow. And some of the values, coordinate with the county to mesh our services and operations with theirs for the betterment of the total population. Eliminate discriminatory practices wherever they may be found that inhibit personal fulfillment, provide a broad variety of services and amenities that benefit our residents, encourage community involvement in Columbia affairs, provide transparent communication about CA's programs and practices, and invite public comment, ensure that architectural covenants are observed and enforced.
There's two that I think you missed there. One is that it be economically integrated as well as racially and otherwise integrated.
Yeah.
And the other is that the buildings be, or the whole town, city, whatever you want to call it, be at a human scale.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alan. Like I said, I just sketched this out really more for format than anything else. And these are the kind of comments that we could add to this. And Renee brought up the last one, make a profit. And I say this is often misunderstood. Yes, Rouse needed to repay his lenders and investors, but he also wanted to demonstrate that his planned community concept was not some pie in the sky philanthropic endeavor. It was economically feasible. And the values are that we practice sound fiscal policies and that we encourage responsible, sustainable development. And there are probably a lot of other ones in here that.
All right, so can I summarize just quickly some of the things that I heard? I heard transparency, amenities, diversity, planning, community involvement, economic integration, respect for land, financial stability, environment, and encourage growth.
That's a good summary. Thank you.
I'm sure there are many others as we continue to think about this. I'd like to go on to the third question. This is all food for thought. This is the CA timeline. If you remember the document that I sent, we're looking back over the last 20 years. 55 years is a little too big a chunk to take on, but we can look back over the last 20 years and ask, what are we most proud of when we look back over CA's history? What are some of the milestones and accomplishments that CA has achieved? And if you think about this in terms of decades, from 2000 to 2010, and then from 2010 to the present day, 2020, what are some of the milestones that jump out at you as accomplishments and milestones? What are you proud of?
Well, Sherry, I mean, I was thinking, I mean, there's a number of things, but like our pathways, you know, the fact that we've extended and kept our pathways up. You think of the new pathway around Lake Kinmacundy, pathways into, you know, different areas, improvements, widening. You know, the whole pathway system, I think, is a really good accomplishment. I think the programs we offer down at the lakefront, pre, you know, pandemic, I thought, you know, we should be proud of those. The, you know, the birthday celebration, the dancing under the stars, the movie night, a way of servicing the community.
What decade would you put that in, Andy?
I have to think about that.
Okay. And the pathway around Lake Kit, that was 2010 and 2010 to 2020.
I think, yeah, 2010, 2020.
2015, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was sort of mid.
Okay. Okay, and the programs at the lakefront really started
long time ago.
pretty way back, so we can put
Right.
them in at earlier 2000 to 2010. Okay.
You can add perhaps the programs that are developing in Symphony Woods.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
That's a whole
Okay.
different kind of programs.
Okay, and that would be our current decade.
And those are very inclusive. More so, I think the emphasis there on inclusion is more so than, say, the programs at the lakefront.
So what's new there? I think it's the free concerts, right? Aren't those kind of new?
Oh yeah, the kids series, the using a lot of the our partners in the community, the Columbia Orchestra, jazz band. We brought in, you know, foreign films, Mystic India, whatever.
Okay, great.
But the
Great.
lakefront programs have always been free, so that doesn't distinguish them from the lakefront programs.
So another one, Shari, is we paid off our bonds.
Paid off bonds. Okay.
You know, I mean, if you think about it, people thought we'd never end up paying off all those bonds, that, you know,
Interesting.
tens of millions of dollars, and we actually succeeded and did it.
Okay, and when was that, Andy?
It's somewhere between 2000 and 2010. I'd have to go back and find the right.
Oh, no, was it that early? I thought it was later.
It might have been later. I'll have to go back and get the actual date.
I think it was
Yeah, I
later.
think it's 2010 to 2020 also,
Yeah.
because it took years to do that.
Right. Andy,
Okay.
I'm curious though, in paying off the bonds, in doing all of the capital improvements we've been doing in the last few years, we didn't finance any of those, and we used our capital. Is that, you know, is that always the wisest thing to have done?
Well, that's the kind of reflection that is very interesting for us right now, to look back to the past and how we did it in the past, what we've done over the last 10 years, and what we might have to do looking into the future. How about the tennis facility, the new tennis facility?
And how about the new athletic club renovations? And the Hobbit's Gun Clubhouse? You know.
Okay, so renovations, those are not new things, but they are renovations
Yeah.
to existing.
The Hobbit's Glen is a new thing. That was a brand new building.
Absolutely.
Right, that is true. Okay. Any other milestones? I was thinking about the solar co-op. These can be programs as well. We instituted a solar co-op that has helped so many homeowners put solar panels on their homes.
How about the fact that we dredged our lakes and came up with a policy to address the issue of dredging?
Okay. So it's
I
a
was going
lake.
to say we came up with it from the bottom of the lake.
Yeah, just about. Any others? Any others that you think
Sure,
about?
another thing is, the whole ability that we were able to turn over some pond responsibility to the county.
Yeah,
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 that was really a good accomplishment that,
right.
will save us money in the long run. But, yet met our values, our goals.
Andy, I'd like to add to that because that's exactly what I was thinking of is we achieved trying to get the county to admit, well, I want to put this more tactfully, what it should be doing as compared to, or cut back maybe on Columbia Association feeling it had to be all things to all people and pay for everything, as opposed to trying to equalize it where if the county was doing it outside and our taxpayers were paying for that, then maybe the county needed to accept some responsibility, like the ponds, like some of the paths, other things in Columbia. And I think we're beginning the overpass example. On
Okay,
Cedar
so
Lane.
Ginny, could that be summarized as CA and county partnerships?
Yeah,
we
it is a partnership, but it's trying to get that balance, and we're only starting. We've only gotten like 5% of what we should eventually get to, 10% maybe.
Okay, so we really
It's
have,
an equity. Actually, it's an equity. I don't know about a partnership. It's an equity issue. We're
Okay.
getting that balance, and it's really an equity issue for me, anyway.
all right, I'll note that as well, that it's about equity. We have a lot of things that we can be proud of looking back over the last 20 years. I think that's part of how we have renewed what Columbia Association is about. But let's get to question 4. It's not all positive. We can bask in our accomplishments, but are there things that we're sorry about? Are there things that we wished we had accomplished? Are there goals and objectives or policies that were set by the board, but acknowledge that they haven't been accomplished yet? Think about
Yes.
some of the things
I
that,
would say
yeah,
moving out of downtown, CA headquarters moving out of downtown.
Okay. Headquarters, moving out of downtown. Nancy?
Developing a healthier relationships with the villages.
Developing a relationship with villages.
Being more transparent in their communications and organized.
More transparent in communication. Okay,
I would add board development.
board development.
Could do a better job on that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
So I got another one which you'll probably remember, Shari. I missed us having a budget advisory committee or like financial advisory committee where we could refer questions and let that committee go off and do the research and everything and bring it back to the board.
I agree.
Okay.
That would be good.
I mean, I think that's one of the things we used to have and we just dropped it.
We used to have, yes, standing committees
Yeah.
that would do work on an issue and then bring it back to the board.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, okay. One of the things that occurred to me, and in fact, I have this sitting right on my desk here. We had a aquatics master plan that included a second indoor pool. Never happened.
Yeah, and that I overlap with that. That was one of my 3.
Okay.
The other was somewhere, and I think this was in the 2010 timeframe, we gave up the city fair, maybe even before that, in favor of the Festival of the Arts. We did one city fair around the 2008 to 10 timeframe, but we hadn't had one for a while, and we haven't had one since, which is a very different kind of event than the Festival of the Arts. I'm not saying it should be that and not Festival of the Arts, but to me, that's a story.
Okay.
And the other is this would be the 2010 to 2020 would be the giving of a perpetual easement to a private company to manage Symphony Woods.
Okay.
I think another thing I'd add to the list, Shari, is we don't seem to make good use of our advisory committees.
Okay.
We don't really pay that much attention to them, and
Okay, and we've had many of the same advisory committees for many, many, many years. And we really haven't added perhaps some new advisory committees to look at some of the new issues that have come up. That's something to think about. I was thinking also, the board passed a minority business policy. We established goals for purchasing. I don't know that we have ever checked back on that. I don't know where that is. And so for me, that is a sorry. We passed a policy, but we don't know what happened to it. And that was our lack of follow-up.
That's right.
And I would add for the advisory committees, I agree with what you said, Andy, but also we haven't really treated them as board committees, board advisory. We treat them sort of as staff advisory committees and not as board advisory committees.
Well, actually, Andy, we were planning on getting together with the chair and vice chair of all the advisory committees that we're going to have dinner with them, remember? One of the stakeholders, and that would have been fantastic, but.
I just put one of the things we haven't really accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, that was a start.
Okay, so what's really interesting about this list is that as we go through this, we need to look back at what we were able to do, maybe what we were not able to do, and think about what might we be able to do in the future. Are some of those things still possible? Are some of them not possible anymore? And do we want to have new goals that represent the current situation? And that really leads us to question 5. Looking out towards the future, what are CA's challenges and opportunities? Whenever you're in a state of chaos, you know, they say it's very challenging, but it can also be a time of opportunity. So within the new normal, whatever that's going to be, and the new financial constraints that we're going to find ourselves in, how can we still identify challenges and opportunities? What constraints do we face in planning for the near future? And when I say near future, that usually means 6 to 12 months. What are we looking at in the next 6 to 12 months? And then what challenges do we face in planning for the long-term future of CA? And I'm glad you brought that up because, Andy, because maybe we can use our advisory committees to be integrated into this new planning kind of process. So what about the near future?
So, Shari, I was thinking, one of the things is how do we involve the millennials, okay, into how do we service the millennials? Another issue I see, another challenge is how do we communicate with everyone? Because there are so many different ways now.
Okay. How to communicate with everyone.
Right.
Okay. All right.
One of the constraints is we don't know what the constraints are.
Okay.
Truly, we don't know what the future's going to bring. We don't know. So it's not like we can plan ahead and know that we got to last until April 15th and then we can do X. Who knows what?
Okay, so it's uncertainty, right? It's that living with uncertainty. And all organizations now are really facing this. And I'm sure you're hearing this from lots of people around the community.
Well, Sherry, one of
yeah.
my concerns is we create a lot of the uncertainty ourselves. In the last couple of years, I feel sorry for Susan. At one point, we are supposed to set the cap, and the rate structure so that she and her staff can prepare a budget. Then we start going to change it, keep bringing up the same, let's do something, let's change it. We, I hope, will get disciplined about in July. We're going to look at this maybe in August. And somebody sent an email around to this effect. We actually make a decision on that so that at least there are some boundaries that Susan has. And then I guess my other hope is the staff will really look at the budget, look at what revenues they really think will be coming in, and look at what programs, in their opinion, we don't need anymore, or we can't afford anymore, or what facilities or whatever. And they will present us with that budget so that it's really, we get the professional opinion of the staff. Whether we agree or not on everything, it's not same old, is my hope.
Okay, so one of the
I know that's a pretty
constraints,
tough line, but what?
one of the constraints, if I'm summing this up right, is that we need to make a decision by August.
Yes.
Okay.
Or, yeah, or I don't know, Andy, would it be July?
August, July, August, definitely by August. Absolutely has to be done by August.
To be fair to the staff, yeah.
All right, what other constraints might there be?
There
Are
will
there
be
just-
fewer staff potentially.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, loss of staff. Okay. What else?
I'm going to say clear financial information on a timely basis.
That's a constraint. How? Let me understand that.
Okay, so the sports and fitness or membership billed members 2 weeks ago or a week ago for their new membership fee. And they know how much they've collected, but yet they've refused to tell us. So we don't know if they're meeting a budget that they've self-imposed on themselves or not.
Okay, so could we say something like lack of knowledge of revenue?
The board has.
Yes, that's a constraint that the board would have under these new conditions.
That reminds me of and this is prompted by what you just said, but sort of off topic, so we may not be able to get into it, but are we ever going to talk about this $10 charge for members who want to freeze their membership?
Good question.
Well, not tonight. Not the specifics tonight, but some of these issues that have come up may relate back to some of the things that we've talked about. So we want to be looking for patterns. We want to be looking for trends. We want to be looking for systems.
I agree with all that. And I don't want us to lose specific things we ought to be focusing on in those interests. I mean, it's a delicate balance for me.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Alan, what do you think some of the challenges will be for the longer term, looking out 2 to 5 years?
Well, the biggest challenge that came to me was we have an opportunity to decide not just specific programs that we want to do or not do, but to really decide what business or businesses are we in.
Okay, so When you say that, are you talking about the business model of CA?
Well, I guess I don't know. The business model means the same thing to everybody, but you know, it's like the one I put out in an email the other day as just something we could be thinking about. Is running fitness facilities something the CA ought to be in, or should we be finding some other model for getting those services to people? As an example.
Okay, so long-term, that's kind of a big kind of question that we perhaps don't have enough information, but we can be scanning the horizon to see what seems to be happening in the world.
Well, we can also be deciding whether we want to tackle that, or do we just want to continue operating within the parameters that we've always operating within, and then do
Okay,
the scanning once we make that decision.
So again, going back to stakeholders, all of this certainly is going to circle back to who are our stakeholders. Anybody else? What about the long term? What do you see, Andy, looking at long term?
Well, one of the things I see is that you see a change in the city. As an example, every apartment building now has its own pool and its own fitness room. You know, all these office buildings have their own small little fitness room. And that's a relatively new development actually for Columbia, because if you think about it, you know, and so that's something we have to consider is, and the other thing is, you know, it's back to the city is very diverse, and how do we incorporate diversity into the organization and our programs and things like that. It's just, the Columbia of 2010 is not the Columbia of 1970, you know, or things like that.
2020.
It's 2020 now, Andy. You might want to check your calendar.
All right, so the question is, and this has been raised in communities, in villages, do we look like Columbia? Do we look like Columbia as it is now? So that's something that needs to inform our thinking about the future, where we invest, what we put our time and energy into in terms of what kinds of services does the Columbia of today and tomorrow want? How do we serve? And I think that has a lot to do with diversity and inclusion and how we develop community leadership going into the future. That relates directly to our strategic plan that we talked about over the course of a year. So all of this kind of wraps together. Again, you know, none of this, there's no right answer to any of these questions. But I think as people are thinking through these broader issues and coming up with these concrete examples, I think we're going to be able to develop some consensus around, you know, who do we serve? What do we want to put our resources into? And what does it mean for the future of Columbia? And what does the community think about that? So thank you. I appreciate it. I welcome any other thoughts that you have about this. I'm going to just write up some of the notes that I have, and I'll get that back to you during the course of the week.
I'd like to make a comment. I think this is terrific what you've done.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, don't we have a 5-year plan?
Yeah.
And how does this relate to the 5-year plan? I would love to replace the 5-year plan with something intelligent, and maybe this is what we ought to do. I mean, the last thing, we had an elephant that spent 2 years giving birth to a mouse, and we didn't ask the right questions. We had 30 people working on it. You cannot create a document with 30 people. This is something that the board should have done on our own. And Shari, I think you've really jumped right into it. So
Yeah.
I'm all for this. I really applaud what we're doing here, and good luck with writing up your notes and everything.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Thanks,
And I
Sherry.
just have a question before we start winding down. All of this I love. I think it's brilliant. Can I include it in my notes, or would you prefer I not? I'm open to your,
I'll leave it to the board. Is there any reason it should not be included?
Well, isn't this an open meeting?
It's an open
it is
meeting.
an open meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question. Out of
I
respect.
think, some of my thinking about this is because of my talks with people in the community, things that people have said. And so I really think that the more input we get, the more people we get thinking creatively, the more people understand the real challenges we're facing and our desire to continue to serve this community. The better our next set of planning will be. So sure.
And I would say that I think it would make sense to treat it as a board. This, like the document that Sherry's going to type up, is a board document. It's not like Renee said this and Dick said that. It's
right.
a list. And I think if in your notes you could treat it the same way, and just say we discussed these questions and are going to continue to do that. I don't know how much specificity you're going to put in your notes other than that, but keep it at the board level rather than the.
I'm just going to feedback
comment.
exactly the words that I heard. And so it's going to be a long list and everybody can refer back to it. No narrative there.
All right.
Okay. Andy, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Shari.
Yep.
Next up, chairman's remarks. It's written. Any questions? I think the only thing I'd add is I actually did go back to Supreme, took a few classes.
That's courageous.
I know. But one thing I want to really say is the staff was very friendly.
Great.
Everybody who walked in, it was very good, very nice. Not exactly the same thing as before, but got the classes. People were there. People were enjoying themselves. All right. Any questions? If not, move on to Milton's report.
Well, Andy, I do have a question. In those classes,
Yes.
was proper physical distancing maintained and all that?
Yes. Yes, it was very nice. They had I'll call them labels on the floor, which would tell you exactly where to stand, and it was the appropriate distance apart. The bikes were organized to be separated by the appropriate distance. When you go in, they actually give you a bottle of disinfectant. So you can actually clean the equipment if you want yourself. So a lot of thought went into it, and I just overall want to thank
Great.
Dan and his people for.
And how about the locker room area?
No, they were off limits. You can't use the locker room, but you can still use the restroom component.
Yeah, Andy, I'd like to add to that because we've used the athletic club a couple of times, and it's phenomenal. Absolutely fantastic work that the staff did. If you haven't been to one of the clubs, I'd really suggest that you just walk in and see what an unbelievably great job that they're doing. I think our members are being protected. We've just got to encourage more people to try it. It's extremely well done and safe.
Okay, President's report. It's submitted in writing. Any questions for Milton? Janet?
Yeah, I had one question. So Milton, I was just curious about the teen center. Is the expectation that that will open in alignment with fall schooling, or is there any possibility that that would be open sooner than that? I know it sometimes has some summer programming, and I believe they're planning on having some in-school sessions in the summer. So I was curious if there was any ability to open that up sooner.
Milton, you're on mute.
Or he's gone to the bathroom.
Yeah, so I'll follow, this is Susan, I can follow up on that for him. I don't know specifically, we've talked about a lot of things, but I don't remember a current discussion on the teen center. We'll find out and get back to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do. And Susan, I suppose you're as good a position to answer this as anybody. Let me go back to what I asked before. I'd love to hear the thoughts that went into a decision to impose a $10 a month fee on people for not being comfortable enough to go to the clubs yet, given the pandemic. And was there any talk about possible reaction by the community?
So that process has been in place a long time, and people were doing that. They've done that for many, many years.
We've never had a pandemic like this for many, many years.
Right.
Right, so
This
they
is
can
not the
cancel.
same.
Yeah, they can cancel. We have, I think about, gosh, I don't remember, but before we reopened the clubs, I think there were 700 freezes, and other folks had canceled. So it's something that people have been satisfied to do, but we didn't discuss it in these terms. I don't recall a conversation about not having the freeze fee.
Okay, I will say that as I read that memo, it felt, and maybe it's just an assumption on my part, and maybe I'm the only one who made that assumption, but it was not clear that I could simply cancel my membership now and then pick it up in 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 months when I was ready to. Now, maybe that was just an assumption, but I don't think it's an unreasonable assumption given that those are the way it was framed. It wasn't like you can cancel now and come on back when you're ready. It was you can cancel or you can pay us to continue. And that's not satisfactory to me.
Can I also get in here? I'd like to get in here if I could.
Dick's next.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had the policy in the past to accommodate the snowbirds, and that made sense. They could maintain their membership even though they're out of town, come back and just jump back in. This is a totally different situation. So this is not a continuation of a former policy. And from a marketing standpoint, I mean, from a financial standpoint, yes, it makes sense. From a marketing standpoint, after the rhubarb we've been in over swimming pools and the real strong antagonism we're facing, we're trying to get back to normal. The last thing in the world you want to do is start sticking people with additional fees for services that they might not be able to use. So it was a smart financial move, but a really dumb marketing move. And since we don't have a marketing department right now, I'll let it slide.
Nancy?
You're much kinder than I am, Dick. I do not want to let it slide. I think it was first of all, it was sent out 2 days before people had to decide if they were going to go with the $10 or not. That was simply outrageous. We've been screamed at even tonight at Speak Out, Resident Speak Out. We were screamed at. This guy was obviously angry about the pools. It is as important financially as it is public relations wise that we establish a good rapport with our community. Otherwise, we don't need to exist. And I think that we need to go back and take that $10 fee away. We should not be upcharging then people who re-up after they have canceled for 3 months. We need to see what we can do to undo the damage we've done and bring people around to what CA is supposed to be about, which is community. That has to be the first thought.
It's a value.
Sorry. Pardon?
Okay. Anything else?
It's a value.
All right.
It's a value.
Well,
Okay.
Andy, I get that we're in a bit of a limbo in terms of what to do. But, you know, when you say something like anything else, and several board members have expressed some pretty strong feelings, and hearing nothing back from staff, and I don't know where Milton is. I don't expect Susan to override Milton all of a sudden.
Yeah,
But
I don't know where
that's
Milton is.
unacceptable to just say, okay, anything else, and let's move on.
Well,
Well,
somebody
that
could make
we
a
get
motion.
ignored.
No, somebody, we could
I-
make a motion. You could have a motion to dismiss the 3 reading rule and then a motion to waive the $10 fee.
Do it.
Good for you. Go for it.
Okay, I move to waive
Well-
the 3 reading rule.
I'll second
I
it.
second it.
Discussion? Yeah, I'd like, before I would vote on this, I'd really like to understand more what the pros and cons are, and you need that from the staff, and how, you know, what it means. You already has, what, 700 people that froze the membership? I'm not sure if that's.
So then we give them their money back.
Yeah, but where are you going to get the money to, well, anyway, I'd like to learn more about it before we just go ahead and vote on it. That's just my opinion.
Right, I mean, I
That's what we
would.
can do. That's what we can do during discussion.
No,
So
you
we have
can,
staff here.
I think you need more information too. But Renee made a motion. Let's see, who seconded? Nancy?
Nancy.
Nancy. All right, I mean, my thought is, this is something you ask staff, the rationale, let them answer it and come back, and then the board makes the decision. But I think you really do need some information. All
Okay,
right.
and how
Yeah.
quickly can that be done?
Yes.
Yeah,
we
meanwhile,
need a
another
time
month
limit
goes
on it.
by.
Bring it back at the next meeting.
No, that's 2 weeks.
That's
from
another month.
No, it's a
Two
No,
month.
that's a
from
month from
now.
now.
A
It's a
month from
month.
now.
Right.
Let's have a white paper drawn up tomorrow and then sent to the board and,
Yes.
and then maybe set up a quick closed meeting to vote on it.
Oh, we could do
Why would
that.
it be closed?
I'm sorry. I just
An open
instinctively
meeting.
say that. It'd be an open meeting.
Well, don't you have to give so many days notice?
Yeah, you do have to give so many days notice.
Well, okay, so
Yeah, I
let's.
think it's a little unfair to
start
think that something
process.
can be
Okay,
turned
wait.
around by tomorrow.
Janet?
I think it's a little unfair to expect staff to turn some document around by tomorrow. It's
Yeah,
already
yeah.
10 o'clock at night. I mean, let's be
Right.
realistic here.
I agree with Janet.
And
Okay,
they
let's
do not
figure
even
that
do-
out.
they-
Okay.
Okay,
What
talk,
day
bring
do
it.
you think they could have it?
Too many people are talking. Lynn, Dick?
Now-
I was just asking Janet, how much time do you think we should give them?
I don't know. I think you need to ask staff what a reasonable period of time is and see, because we don't know what else is competing for their time.
And we don't know who's furloughed, who isn't, what staff is available. You know,
Okay, so next
But
month.
this
is what
puts
you're
the
saying.
community at risk. This puts the community in a really bad position. It puts CA, I should say, in a bad position with the community. We need to make things happen a whole lot faster than we normally do. And I understand there's not a lot of staff, but perhaps here's Susan. She could tell us what is reasonable for her to come up with something
I'm
to
thinking
give
the
us a rationale.
this conversation though was before this meeting. And so if you want to demand action, then demand it, but don't wait till the meeting and then say, okay, have something by tomorrow. I mean, if you want to act fast, then you need to create a strategy for action. You can't have this reactionary, let's just ask for this off the cuff. So, I mean, that's.
I've been sending information,
You- you-
asking questions about this for how long? 2
Yeah,
weeks?
but you know what
Getting
you need
nowhere.
to do is propose a way forward.
Okay, well, let's ask Susan what she can do. I think that's fair.
I think Renee has had her hand up for a while. I've had my hand up for a while.
Let Susan go. Let
Have
Susan
Susan
answer. It's
out
my
there.
turn.
Susan? Oh, you're muted, Susan.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Susan?
Yeah, I said, I don't know what to say.
Okay, So,
Wow, that's not a good answer.
Well,
okay, so let's, okay. So I know that I drive everybody crazy with numbers. So what I've heard is that we have about 700 people that have frozen their membership.
And
At
I
$10,
it's
$10 a month.
2,500.
Go
I
ahead.
made a mistake. It's 2,500.
It's 2,500 that have frozen their membership.
So that's
Okay, well, that's a
$25,000 a month?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the question becomes, how many people have we lost? Several thousand. And what are we going to do today? How agile are we going to be to create an environment that's going to lure these customers back to CA? And is this $10 fee going to irritate them just enough that they go from freezing to dropping it? Okay.
I would just like to point out that Agility does not recommend ad hoc action.
I agree with
I think the use of that word in that sentence was incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Could I get in, please, Andy?
Let Susan, Susan's talking.
so you want to know, we want a white paper, according to Dick, on the freeze process. How many people are participating? And then what else is it that you're interested in?
How many people have canceled their memberships?
Okay.
And what amount?
What was the rationale for coming up with the $10? You said the snowbirds, and I assume that was the whole rationale. Was there more to it than that?
No, not, I think it was used for, I don't remember. It's been a long time. I'd have to dig back into that. I don't know.
Andy? Can I get in the, okay. Susan?
I thought I had to be in the queue before.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ginny did.
Sorry, I missed you, Alan.
Yeah, to me, I don't want to add extra work to the staff on all this. I mean, to me, those are interesting numbers. Sounds like some people already have some numbers or some sense of what the numbers are. But to me, this is not a numbers question. This is a public relations, customer service, community relations question. And I think the two things, or maybe it's 2.5, the saying you got this choice to freeze or cancel, and it wasn't clear that one could cancel and then come right back some months later without paying the $10 a month fee. The fact of the $10 fee and the two days, a day and a half actually, by the time people got it to make the decision, to me is all just unacceptable. And it doesn't matter to me how many people did or didn't take advantage of it or left. I mean, those are all important, like how many people left. Those would be good numbers for us to know as we think for the future. But it wasn't handled well, and our job is to look. We are the interface between the community and CA, and the staff runs the business part of CA. We got to manage that interface, and to me, this was not a way to do it, and I think we need to change that.
All right.
I don't need to make the board do
Ginny
more.
and Jess.
Okay, just for clarification, okay, and we probably should know this, but I don't. If you freeze at it's $10 a month, Susan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Does that mean then when they decide that they want to begin to use their membership or reactivate their membership at that point, that they'll have the same rate that they paid before?
Yeah.
Okay, now, if they cancel because they are concerned or they don't want to pay the $10 a month, are they at risk then if they decide in a couple of months, I do want to join the club again, that they will have to pay whatever the going rate is then?
Yes.
So the point of the $10 is part of the point of the $10. You're guaranteed the rate, possibly a lower rate than if you canceled.
Yes.
It's
possible. Right.
Okay, so that's one of the benefits of my deciding to freeze at $10 as opposed to just canceling and risking paying a higher rate. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can you
Yes.
tell us how many people have canceled their membership?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but
Oh,
I can.
Can I jump in?
Okay.
So as of 3 days ago, we had just under 2,500 people freeze their membership since February 19th, which last time we billed was February 18th. And we had just under 2,000 people cancel their membership. Now, to put that in perspective, we don't track freezes normally, so I can't give a year-over-year comparison. We had just under 1,200 people cancel during the same time period last year. So the incremental net is it's not only is not the right word, but it's not the 2,000, it's about 700 compared to the same time last year.
Do I understand you to say, Dan, that we are retroactively charging people $10 from mid-February?
No, I did not say that.
Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you.
I'm just giving you the numbers of freezes and cancels since February 19th.
Okay.
So I think it's my turn.
Yes.
I just kind of, based on what Dan just said, I mean, I think if 2,500 people have already chosen to freeze their membership, then it's, that's enough people that I think we need to really consider who are we serving if we go back on this $10 fee. You guys have probably all heard from people who are upset, but do you think that's more than 2,500 people? I don't think it is. I think when you think about the fact that then that's an additional $25,000 a month that we would then be losing for the organization, I think you have to make a decision based on the 95% instead of the 5%. There are always going to be people that are unhappy with every decision or any decision that is made. So we cannot let that small group of angry people dictate how the organization makes decisions. That's my personal view. So I do think, again, this is the policy. It's not a new policy that was put in place. And I can see where it might have made sense to say we're going to do something different, but considering the number of staff we have, they're doing the best they can with the information and the resources they have. And I think that to go back and undo that is just a waste of time and money, and it will negatively impact the morale of the staff.
Jenny?
That's all.
Yeah, I don't know why we're jumping at a conclusion as to the fact that we know why 2,500 people have frozen their membership. We don't know. And I don't know how there's a way of finding out. So there could be a lot that have very valid reasons. They're sick, they can't use it, whatever, so we can't assume that they all froze it because they're mad at us or they, whatever.
Dick?
Like to get in?
Okay.
Hearing this, okay, these numbers that Dan has given us, that puts a new perspective on this. And as Jess said, maybe it's too late to go back on this thing since so many people have committed. But I think the lesson we've learned from this is that these decisions cannot be made just off the cuff, and we need to put a little more consideration into how they're communicated and when the board finds out about it. One of the problems that I have as a member of the board is I get calls all the time from my constituents who want to know what's going on, and I can't give them honest answers if I don't know. And so I started hearing about this $10 thing, and I had no information to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how this was sold to our members. I mean, were they told about the option and how this would help them? Again, we have a communications issue here. So I'm willing to drop this thing for now, but I think we have a lesson that we've learned, and that is we've got to get better at marketing what we're doing and communicating what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Alan? Alan?
Sorry, it helps to unmute. I take your point, Janet, that capital A Agile calls for certain things. I heard whoever said it was a lowercase a Agile. And I think sometimes when you're Agile, you make a spur of the moment decision, not on the basis of nothing, but something happens and you got to make a decision. You got to take the information that comes and make the decision. I also want to make it clear that I do know how this was sold to members, because I as a member, got one of the forms or messages. And my concern about this has nothing to do, it was reinforced by a few people that I heard from who are upset about it. But my upset had nothing to do with them. It had to do with me as putting myself in a member's shoes, seeing this message. And I really don't think we can take solace in 2,500 people doing it, because they were given a Hobson's choice. They were given 36 hours or whatever to make a choice, and so they made the choice they could make. And I am not sanguine enough, Dick, to believe that we've learned our lesson. It seems to me this kind of thing keeps happening, I'm not blaming any individual. I know the staff is overworked and underpaid at this moment, and it's just, but this kind of thing does have to fall in our lap, and it may feel picayune, but it really intersects with one of our main strategic goals. It intersects with the whole thing, and we need to, we often hear from the management that, they will let us know when something happens that's going to affect the relationship with the villages. We didn't get to know this. We didn't get to know that this was happening. So I don't think we've learned the lesson. And despite people's best efforts, I'm not denigrating anybody's integrity, efforts, or goodwill. It's just we're not advancing enough.
Shari?
Yeah.
I know you wanted to talk something about the communications, which refers to what Dick said, right?
Yes. Okay. All right. This is a good point to do it. I took a look at the form that we just approved. And I don't know whether this fits there, but here's my best way of doing it. The form starts with, as a board member, I would like the creation of a communications working group, so that we can have more rapid, accurate, and helpful communications strategies and timely informational messages delivered in multiple modes to CA members and stakeholders. This relates to strategic goal number 1, objective 5. And the reasoning behind it is that the coronavirus pandemic has brought about rapidly changing conditions affecting our facilities, programs, and services. So this is something that the board can do by creating this new committee. And I'm thinking 3 board members that would review communication issues, coordinate with CA staff, and make recommendations to the CA board on improving print, digital, and social media communications with members and stakeholders. I can write that up. I'm sorry I didn't have time to write that up, but the gist of it is, let's get a committee together to see whether we can help. We will learn something by the doing. So if people are concerned about this, and we know that under the conditions that we have right now, it's very difficult to respond quickly. Let's get in there and make some suggestions, whether they're systems changes. Let's go for the big picture and see what we can improve. So
Sounds
that
good.
Yeah, it would be up to 3 board members to volunteer. I think the committee should operate for at least 6 months, if not a year. If people can make a commitment to a year, I think that would be wonderful. But even for 6 months, and then we can offer some assistance and something concrete.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
I would put the time limit on it until we hire a new marketing communications person and that person gets up to speed. This is kind of an emergency thing for us to, take a deep dive into communications because it's just not being done right now. So I'll volunteer for the committee, but again, I think we ought to turn this back over to staff when they have the capability.
All right, so let's kind of go back here. So Renee has suggested that we suspend the 3 reading rule to take some action on the $10 fee. I think we have to have a 2/3 vote on that. So if you guys want to continue on this whole $10 thing, you vote yes. If you want to end it, vote no. For discussion for right now. So I'll call the roll call on suspending the 3 reading rule for the purposes of Renee making a further motion about the $10. Janet,
No.
Shari,
No.
Ginny,
No.
Dick,
No.
Lynn,
No.
Nancy,
Yes.
Jess,
No.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Andy, no. Okay, that fails. All right. What does the board think about the board work group for communications? Is there anybody
I think it's
opposed
a great
to that?
idea.
Anybody opposed to that?
No.
I mean, I can actually create an ad hoc working group right now and then the board can, ratify. Who would like to serve on the committee? Dick has volunteered to chair it. Anybody else?
I didn't say chair.
Somebody has to run the committee, Dick.
I think it's a triumvirate of equals. So
Somebody
Andy,
has to do the paperwork, Dick. I'm sorry. Somebody has to set up the meeting. Somebody has to do that stuff.
well,
All right,
it's not a good
Andy,
idea.
Andy, since I've just presented this and I haven't been able to write it, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to do that, why don't I write up,
All right.
write this up? People can think about whether they can make that commitment and step up, and it would be wonderful. And then let's see within this next week how that shapes up. Is
All
that
right.
all right?
Yeah, I thought that was the whole idea
Sounds
of
good.
Janet's idea. I didn't think we would be necessarily voting right away on.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's move on. Inter Arbor Trust report. Any questions? All right.
Well,
And
just a comment. They're doing a phenomenal job. I mean, I think they deserve a lot of congratulations for trying to be innovative, for the partnerships they're developing, and just great work.
My packet didn't include an Inter Arbor Trust memo.
What?
Was that included later?
I'm sorry, what?
It was
I
added later.
downloaded my packet too soon and I didn't know that. I don't have an Inter Arbor Trust.
It was added,
Yeah.
I think only today, I think.
Well, no, it was added about 2 days ago, and Janet sent an email out specifically to the board
Yeah.
saying it was added and that she had updated the webpage.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, I didn't see it.
Yeah, she did send out the email.
Yep.
We do get a lot of emails.
I realize. Yeah, I'm going to tell the communications committee, one of the things they have to work on is how can we
Get slack.
mark which memos must be read? What emails must be read? If you can figure that one out, I'd be really happy.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
you usually put a note on the ones that you want a receipt for.
I've tried different things.
Uh,
All right, financial reports, anything? Tracking forms, any questions? Propose new topics. Shari
Yeah.
brought hers up.
I would like to also talk about the villages and the meeting with the village managers, as we had discussed before. Are we going to talk about it now? We'd like to schedule it. The villages want to schedule it. CA needs to schedule it. It will not be done in an in-person meeting in all likelihood, then it just needs to get on the books. And whether it's a Zoom or whatever, they need to have that meeting.
Okay, so I can tell you, I just heard back from Jonathan today, who is kind of like heading up. And he gave me the information. And so we are going to schedule the meeting.
Yay, hooray.
So it will happen soon. Yeah, so I got the response back from Jonathan, so.
Thank you.
Anything else?
What was the question that Jonathan responded about?
Who to attend? Who to invite? Like with this, who to invite, excuse me, who to invite?
And the answer was?
Village managers, village chairs, CA board, and some key CA staff members.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's about 40 people.
Yeah, about 40 people.
35.
I'm not sure everybody's going to show up. That's how it always works.
So are we doing this on a
We're
virtual?
we're
or-
investigating which way we can do it. Yeah, worst comes to worst.
Zoom has the ability to do breakout groups, which makes it really easy to do large numbers.
Well, we can meet at the Chrysalis, Lynn and Janet.
Yes, true.
Spread out, social
Okay.
distancing at the
But
Chrysalis.
yeah, I mean, it's either going to be virtual, or if we can work it out in some way to do, an actual socially acceptable social distance meeting, we'll try.
With,
All right,
with Megaphone.
anything else? All right, if not, I want to thank everyone. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 10:19. Thank everyone for attending, and have a safe and good weekend. Good night.